The Alpha King was crying again. Lana could smell his grief from half a mile away, bitter as burnt sage, thick as smoke, rolling through the forest in waves that made her wolf whimper and press low to the earth. She crouched behind the ancient oak at the edge of the clearing, her fingers digging into the bark, her breath shallow as she watched the most powerful man in the realm fall to his knees before a grave that held nothing but lies. 12 years. 12 years he'd come here at dawn, alone, his massive frame folded in on itself like something broken. 12 years he'd wept for a daughter who had never died. 12 years she'd watched him mourn her. "Hello, my beautiful ones," Lana whispered into the pre-dawn silence, her voice catching. She wasn't talking to the viewers yet, she was talking to the only family she'd ever known. The trees. The wind. The ghost of a father she could never touch. I wonder where you're all watching from today. Are you somewhere safe? Somewhere warm. Her lips trembled into a sad smile. I hope you've hit that subscribe button, because this story, my story, it's about to get dangerous. And I need you with me for what comes next. She forced her gaze back to the clearing. Alpha King Ethan, her father, was whispering something to the headstone. She couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. His sorrow filled the air like a living thing, curling around her ribs, squeezing until she thought her heart might crack open. Her gift had always been both blessing and curse. While other wolves relied on sight and sound, Lana could taste emotions on the wind, fear like copper, joy like honey, rage like sulfur. But grief? Grief was the worst. It tasted like ash and salt and everything lost. And her father's grief was an ocean. I failed you, Ethan rasped, his voice carrying just enough for her wolf hearing to catch. His hand scarred, trembling, pressed against the cold marble. Every day I live, I fail you again. No, Lana wanted to scream. You didn't fail me. I'm here. I'm right here. But she couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Because revealing herself meant death, not just hers, but his, and everyone she'd sworn to protect. The rogue healer who'd raised her, Mara, had been clear. The people who tried to kill you once will try again. And next time, they'll make sure your father dies watching. So Lana stayed hidden. A ghost haunting her own memorial. A daughter watching her father drown in guilt that should never have been his to carry. Ethan's shoulders shook. Even from here, she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, silver that hadn't been there in the old portraits Mara had shown her. He'd aged in ways that had nothing to do with time. Grief had carved him hollow. If you're listening, he whispered to the stone, if there's any part of you still out there, forgive me. Lana's eyes burned. Her wolf howled inside her chest, desperate to run to him, to let him know she'd forgiven him 1,000 times over for a crime he'd never committed. But then the wind shifted, and she smelled them. Blood. Steel. And beneath it, malice. Her body went rigid. 3 wolves, moving through the forest to the east. Their emotions hit her like a fist, cold determination, anticipation, and something darker. Hunger. They weren't here for the memorial. They were here for the king. Lana's pulse spiked. She'd known this day would come. Mara had warned her the attacks were escalating, that the rebels were getting bolder, that someone inside the palace was feeding them information. But she'd never thought they'd strike here. At the one place her father came to be vulnerable. The place he came to be alone. She had seconds. Maybe less. Ethan was still kneeling, oblivious, lost in his grief. The assassins were closing in. She could hear their paws now, barely a whisper against the forest floor. Professionals. Trained killers. And she was just a girl. Untrained in combat. Unregistered with any pack. Officially, she didn't even exist. But she was also a wolf with a gift no one else had. And she was done hiding. Lana stepped out from behind the oak. Her father's head snapped up instantly, his alpha senses flaring. Their eyes met across the clearing, his storm gray and shattered, hers amber gold and blazing with 12 years of unspoken love. For one impossible heartbeat, the world stopped. Ethan's face went white. His lips shaped a word he couldn't seem to speak. And then the first assassin burst from the tree line, fangs bared, aiming straight for the king's exposed back. Lana didn't think. She moved. Her shift tore through her in a flash of silver light, faster than it should have been possible, fueled by desperation and a daughter's fury. She hit the assassin mid-leap, her jaws closing around his throat before he could make a sound. The taste of his shock exploded across her tongue. He hadn't expected her. Hadn't known she existed. Good. She threw him aside and spun to face the other two, planting herself between them and her father. Her wolf was smaller than theirs, leaner, built for speed rather than power. But her eyes, those strange amber eyes that marked her as something other, glowed with an ancient fire. The assassins hesitated. Behind her, she heard Ethan rise to his feet, his alpha power flooding the clearing like a thunderstorm about to break. Who? His voice was raw, confused, devastating. Who are you? Lana didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the third assassin was smiling. And she smelled the poison on his claws. If you're feeling this story already, drop a comment below and tell me what you think is about to happen. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This is only the beginning. The poison-coated claws gleamed in the early light like liquid death. Lana's wolf snarled, every instinct screaming at her to run, to protect herself the way she'd been taught for 12 years. But running meant leaving him. And she hadn't survived this long, hadn't endured 12 years of watching from the shadows, just to let her father die now. The assassin lunged. She was faster. Her gift flared, that strange ability that had always set her apart, and she felt his attack before his body even moved. His intention tasted like rotten meat, his confidence like overripe fruit about to burst. She twisted left, felt the poisoned claws whistle past her ear, and drove her shoulder into his ribs with every ounce of strength her smaller frame could manage. He stumbled. Not much, but enough. Because behind her, the Alpha King had finally moved. Ethan's shift was nothing like hers, where she was light and speed. He was pure devastating power. His wolf was massive, midnight black with silver eyes that could freeze an enemy's blood. He moved like violence made flesh, like every nightmare the kingdom's enemies had ever whispered about around their fires. He caught the poisoned assassin by the throat and crushed. The other assassin, the one Lana had thrown aside, scrambled to his feet and ran. Smart. He'd survived to report back to whoever had sent them, but right now, survival was all Lana cared about. The clearing fell silent except for their ragged breathing. Lana shifted back to human form, her body shaking with adrenaline. She was dressed in the simple clothes Mara always made her wear: forest green tunic, leather pants, boots worn soft from years of running. Nothing that would identify her. Nothing that would connect her to anyone. She kept her back to Ethan, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Behind her, she heard him shift back as well. Heard the rustle of fabric as he pulled on the clothes he must have left at the edge of the clearing. Heard his footsteps, heavy, hesitant, as he moved closer. Turn around. His voice was command wrapped in confusion, alpha authority trembling at the edges. Let me see your face. Lana closed her eyes. This was it. The moment she'd dreamed of and dreaded in equal measure. The moment everything changed. She turned. Ethan staggered back a step. Up close, there was no denying it. She had his eyes, that rare amber gold that marked the royal bloodline. She had his mother's face, the delicate features Lana had studied in portraits, memorizing every line. She had the slight point to her ears that came from the old blood, the first families, the wolves who'd walked these lands before kingdoms had names. She had everything that marked her as his daughter. Except she was supposed to be dead. No, Ethan whispered. The word came out broken, disbelieving. No, you can't be. She died. My daughter died. I held the ashes. He stopped, his face crumbling. This is a trick. Some cruel game. Who sent you? What do you want? The suspicion in his voice cut deeper than any blade. Lana had expected shock, joy, maybe even anger. But not this. Not the bone-deep wariness of a man who'd been betrayed too many times to trust even his own desperate hope. I'm not here to hurt you, she said quietly. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I'm here because they were. The assassins. I've been watching. Making sure you were safe. Watching. He latched onto the word like a lifeline. For how long? 12 years. The number hung between them like a confession. Ethan's face went through a dozen emotions in as many seconds: disbelief, hope, rage, anguish. His hands clenched and unclenched at his sides, his alpha power crackling in the air around him like a living storm. 12 years, he repeated slowly. You're telling me you've been alive for 12 years? Watching me. And you never, his voice cracked. Why? If you're really her, if you're really why didn't you come to me? Because the people who tried to kill me are still out there. Lana took a half step forward, then stopped when she saw him tense. And they're not just rebels or enemies from outside the kingdom. They're inside. In your palace. In your court. Someone close to you wanted me dead, and they still do. That's impossible. My court is. How did they know? Lana interrupted, her own voice rising despite her best efforts. How did the assassins know exactly when to attack during the coup? How did they know where the nursery was, which guards to bribe, which hallways weren't being watched? How did they get past every defense you had? Ethan's jaw clenched. She could see the truth hitting him, the pieces he'd probably suspected but never wanted to believe. The healer who saved me, Lana continued. Mara, she told me everything. She was there that night. She saw the fire, heard the screams. She grabbed me and ran because she knew. She knew that if she told anyone I was alive, they'd come back to finish what they started. Where's this healer now? Ethan demanded. I want to speak to her. I want answers. I want. She's dead. The words fell like stones. Lana's throat tightened. Even now, 3 months later, the loss was fresh. Mara had been everything: mother, teacher, protector. The only family she'd ever known. They found us, she said softly. 6 months ago. I don't know how, but they did. Mara. She held them off long enough for me to escape. She made me promise I'd survive. That I'd stay hidden until I was strong enough to face whatever comes next. Ethan's expression shifted. The suspicion didn't disappear. She could still smell it on him, sharp and bitter, but it was joined by something else now. Understanding. And beneath that, a grief so profound it made her gift flare in protest. You've been alone, he said. Not a question. A statement weighted with 12 years of guilt. I've had practice. The attempt at levity fell flat. Neither of them smiled. They stood there in the clearing, father and daughter and strangers all at once, with a dead assassin cooling at their feet and the truth bleeding out between them like an open wound. I don't know if I can trust this, Ethan finally said. His voice had gone quiet, almost gentle. I don't know if I can trust you. Do you understand that? I've spent 12 years wishing for the impossible, and now you appear out of nowhere, right when I'm at my most vulnerable, right when assassins attack. I saved your life, Lana pointed out. Or you're part of an elaborate plan to get close to me. The accusation hurt worse than she'd expected. But she couldn't blame him. Not really. He was an alpha king who'd survived countless betrayals. Of course he'd be suspicious. Of course he wouldn't just accept her. There's a way to prove it, she said. A blood test. Your healers would be able to tell if I'm really. No, the word came out sharp, final. If you're right about someone in my court being a traitor, then bringing you to the palace for tests would be signing your death warrant. And if you're wrong, he trailed off, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. If you're wrong, then you're either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish to be standing here right now. Maybe both. This time, the corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. It was gone before she could be sure. What's your name? He asked. Lana. Did Mara give you that? She let me choose it. When I was old enough. Something in his face softened. My mother's name was Alana. We would have named you. He stopped himself. There was a list. Before. Of names we'd considered. Was Lana on it? She wanted to ask. But she couldn't make herself form the words. The sun was rising properly now, painting the clearing in shades of gold and amber. Soon, Ethan's guards would come looking for him. He never stayed at the grave much past dawn. There was always a kingdom to run, always responsibilities waiting. Always the weight of being Alpha King pressing down on shoulders that had never been allowed to properly grieve. You need to go, Ethan said, seeming to reach the same conclusion. Before my guards arrive. Before anyone sees you. Lana nodded. She'd expected this. Prepared for it, even. It still felt like rejection. But Ethan continued, and she looked up sharply. Meet me tonight. There's an old hunting cabin at the northern edge of the forest, about 2 hours' run from here. Do you know it? I know every inch of this forest. Of course you do. Another almost smile. Midnight. Come alone. We'll talk. Really talk. And we'll figure out what happens next. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't the tearful reunion she'd sometimes imagined in her weakest moments. But it was a start. Okay, Lana said. Midnight. She turned to leave, made it 3 steps before his voice stopped her. Lana. She looked back. Ethan was standing beside the gravestone now, one hand resting on the cold marble. The morning light caught the tears on his face, making them gleam like silver. If you're really her, he said quietly. If you're really my daughter, then you should know I never stopped looking. Even after they said there was no hope, even after they begged me to move on, I never stopped. Lana's vision blurred. She didn't trust herself to speak. So she just nodded. And ran. Behind her, she heard him whisper something to the grave, something that sounded like an apology, or maybe a prayer. She didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if she did, she'd run straight to him and damn the consequences. And Mara had died to keep her alive. The least she could do was stay that way long enough to finish what they'd started. Long enough to figure out who'd tried to murder a baby in her crib. And make them pay. Lana made it halfway back to the cave before the trembling started. She collapsed against a birch tree, sliding down until she was sitting in the moss and dead leaves, her whole body shaking like she'd been dunked in ice water. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her hollow and cold and terrified of what she'd just done. She'd revealed herself. After 12 years of hiding, of being careful, of being invisible, she'd stepped into the open. And she'd looked into her father's eyes and seen doubt. Get it together, she whispered to herself, pressing her palms against her eyes. You knew this wouldn't be easy. You knew he wouldn't just believe you. But knowing and feeling were 2 different things. Her wolf whimpered inside her chest, confused and hurting. The animal didn't understand suspicion or political intrigue or the careful dance of trust. It only knew that they'd found their alpha, their father, and he'd sent them away. Lana forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way Mara had taught her during panic attacks. The forest smelled like morning dew and pine and the distant promise of rain. Familiar. Safe. Except nowhere was safe anymore. She'd killed an assassin this morning. Left a body in the clearing with the Alpha King. Even if Ethan disposed of it quietly, word would spread. The assassin who'd escaped would report back. And whoever had sent them, whoever had been trying to kill her father, would know someone had interfered. Would know she existed. Mara, Lana breathed into the quiet. I hope you're watching. I hope I didn't just get us both killed. No answer came. Just the wind in the trees and the distant cry of a hawk. She pushed to her feet and kept moving. The cave where she'd been staying wasn't far, a natural formation deep in the forest that Mara had shown her years ago. It was hidden behind a waterfall, accessible only by a narrow ledge that required perfect balance and no fear of heights. Perfect for a girl who'd spent her whole life running. Lana squeezed through the gap behind the cascading water, the spray soaking her clothes and hair. The cave beyond was small but dry, lit by the handful of candles she'd salvaged from an abandoned cabin. Her belongings were sparse: a bedroll, some clothes, a pack with dried food and herbs Mara had taught her to identify. The bow and arrows she'd taught herself to use, because claws and teeth weren't always enough. And tucked in the corner, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from the damp, Mara's journal. Lana knelt beside it, her fingers trembling as she unwrapped the leather-bound book. She'd read it cover to cover a dozen times since Mara's death, searching for answers, for guidance, for some hint of what to do next. The journal was part medical log, part confession. Mara had documented everything: the night of the coup, the fire, finding baby Lana in the nursery with smoke in her lungs and terror in her eyes. The decision to run rather than report to the king. The years of hiding, moving from place to place, teaching Lana to control her gift. And there, in the final entries, the warnings. They're getting closer, Mara had written 3 months before she died. I can feel it. Someone is asking questions in the villages. Someone knows we're out here. If they find us, Lana, you run. You don't look back. You don't try to fight. You survive. There's a name I've kept from you. A name I wasn't sure I should ever tell you. But if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you need to know. Lucas Thorne. He was the king's most trusted advisor 12 years ago. And he was the last person I saw leaving the nursery the night of the fire. Lana's jaw clenched. Lucas Thorne. The name that had haunted her for 3 months. The man who might have tried to kill her as an infant. The man who, according to Mara's careful notes, was still on the Alpha King's Council. Still whispering in her father's ear. Still trusted. She needed proof. Hard evidence that would convince Ethan without getting herself killed in the process. But how? She couldn't exactly waltz into the palace and accuse one of the king's closest advisors of treason and attempted murder. Could she? A sound outside the cave made her freeze. Footsteps. Careful, deliberate. Someone or something was approaching the waterfall. Lana's heart kicked into overdrive. She grabbed her bow, knocked an arrow with practiced speed, and pressed herself against the wall beside the entrance. Her gift flared, searching for emotions on the wind. And there, curiosity. Sharp and bright and surprisingly unafraid. Not an assassin, then. They would have smelled like violence and determination. This was something else. I know you're in there, a male voice called over the rush of water. Young. Maybe her age, maybe a little older. I can smell the candle wax. Also, you left muddy footprints on the ledge. Lana cursed silently. Sloppy. She was getting sloppy. I'm not here to hurt you, the voice continued. Actually, I'm pretty sure you could hurt me if you wanted to. That thing you did this morning? With the assassins? That was incredible. Her blood turned to ice. He'd seen her. At the clearing. With Ethan. She stepped out from behind the wall, bow raised, arrow aimed at the gap in the waterfall. Who are you? And you've got about 5 seconds to convince me not to put this through your throat. Fair enough. The voice sounded amused, which was either very brave or very stupid. My name is Cade. Well, I guess you could call me a scout for the rebellion. Though honestly, rebellion makes us sound way more organized than we actually are. The rebellion? Lana's finger tightened on the bowstring. The people who've been attacking my father's caravans? Killing his wolves? Those rebels? Whoa, hey, let's not lump everyone together. Cade's tone shifted, became more serious. There are rebels, and then there are the Crown's mercy. We're not the same thing. We don't kill innocents. We're trying to stop the killing. By skulking around in forests and spying on people? By gathering information. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. A pause. Then, can I come in? It's getting awkward shouting through a waterfall. Plus I'm getting soaked. Every instinct screamed at Lana to refuse. To stay hidden. To put an arrow in this stranger and disappear before more people came looking. But he'd seen her this morning. Knew she was alive. And if he'd wanted her dead, he could have reported her location to whoever had sent the assassins. Instead, he was here. Alone. Asking permission. Fine, she said. But slow. And keep your hands where I can see them. Cade squeezed through the gap behind the waterfall, and Lana got her first look at the stranger who'd just upended what was left of her careful world. He was tall, taller than her by a good 6 inches, with dark auburn hair that fell into bright green eyes. Handsome, in a roguish sort of way, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and a smile that suggested he found most of life amusing. He was dressed like someone who spent more time in forests than cities, leather and wool, practical boots, a knife at his belt, but no visible weapons drawn. And his scent, his emotions, were a fascinating mix of genuine curiosity, cautious hope, and something else. Something that made her wolf perk up with interest despite the danger. Attraction. He thought she was pretty. Lana kept the bow raised. Start talking. And don't bother lying, I'll know. Cade's eyebrows rose. That's a neat trick. Some kind of wolf gift. Some kind. Now talk. Right. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. The Crown's Mercy has been investigating the attempts on the Alpha King's life for the past 2 years. We're not rebels. We're loyalists who think someone in the palace is trying to overthrow Ethan from the inside. When we heard about the attack this morning, I was sent to investigate. And you just happened to be close enough to see everything? I've been tracking those assassins for 3 days. Cade's expression turned grim. They're part of something called the Shadow Collective. Professional killers who work for the highest bidder. Someone with a lot of money and a lot of hate wants your father dead. Tell me something I don't know. Okay. How about this? They're not just after the king anymore. Cade took a careful step closer, his green eyes intent on hers. As of about an hour ago, there's a bounty on the head of a mysterious she-wolf who interfered with their contract. Young, fast, with amber eyes that glow. Sound familiar? Lana's stomach dropped. How much? She asked quietly. 50,000 gold marks. Dead or alive, though I suspect they'd prefer alive. Someone wants to know who you are and what you want with the king. And you're here to collect? I'm here to offer you protection. Cade's voice softened. Look, I don't know who you are or why you were protecting the Alpha King this morning. But I know you're in over your head. The Shadow Collective doesn't give up. They'll send more assassins. Better ones. And next time, they won't underestimate you. So what? I just trust you? Join your little rebel group. Loyalist group, Cade corrected with a slight smile. And yeah, actually. Because right now, we're the only ones who know you exist and aren't actively trying to murder you. That makes us your best option. He wasn't wrong. As much as Lana hated to admit it. What do you want in return? She asked. Because there was always a price. Always. Information, Cade said simply. We need to know who the traitor in the palace is. We need proof. And we think, he hesitated, studying her face. We think you might be connected somehow. The assassins who attacked this morning? They weren't supposed to be there. Someone told them the king would be vulnerable. Someone who knew his routine. So you think I'm the traitor? No, Cade's voice was firm. If you were the traitor, you wouldn't have saved him. You would have let them kill him and collected your reward. But I think you know something. Or you're looking for the same answers we are. Lana lowered the bow slowly. Not because she trusted him, trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, but because keeping it drawn wasn't going to change anything. Let's say I believe you, she said carefully. What exactly is the Crown's Mercy offering? Safe houses. Resources. People who can watch your back while you figure out your next move. Cade's smile turned wry. Also, I make a pretty decent campfire stew. So there's that. Despite everything, the danger, the fear, the impossible situation, Lana felt her lips twitch. Campfire stew? Don't knock it till you've tried it. The moment hung between them, strange and fragile. Outside, the sun was climbing higher. In a few hours, she was supposed to meet Ethan at the hunting cabin. Make her case. Try to convince him she was really his daughter. And now she had this, Cade and his Crown's Mercy, and the promise of allies she desperately needed, but had no reason to trust. I need to think about it, Lana said finally. Fair enough. Cade pulled a small carved stone from his pocket and held it out. Keep this. If you change your mind, or if you need help, break it. We'll find you. She took the stone, turning it over in her fingers. It was warm, thrumming with some kind of magic she didn't recognize. One more thing, Cade said as he turned to leave. That name you're probably carrying around in your head, Lucas Thorne? He's not the only one. There's a whole network working against the king. And they've been planning something big. Something that's supposed to happen in the next few days. Lana's head snapped up. What kind of something? That's what we're trying to figure out. Cade paused at the cave entrance. But whatever it is, it involves the lost princess. The one who died 12 years ago. He looked back at her, his green eyes knowing. Funny coincidence, don't you think? That she'd become relevant right when you show up. And then he was gone, slipping through the waterfall and disappearing into the forest beyond. Lana stood frozen, the carved stone warming in her palm, her mind racing. They knew. The Crown's Mercy, the Shadow Collective, maybe even Lucas Thorne, they all knew or suspected she was alive. Which meant tonight's meeting with Ethan wasn't just about proving her identity. It was about survival. And possibly, about preventing whatever the traitors had planned for the lost princess. She looked down at Mara's journal, still open to the page with Lucas Thorne's name. Okay, Mara, she whispered. I'm trusting your instincts. Let's see where they lead. She had 8 hours until midnight. 8 hours to decide whether to trust Cade and his Crown's Mercy. 8 hours to prepare for a conversation that would either reunite her with her father or get them both killed. And somewhere out there, in the palace she'd never seen, a traitor was planning something that involved her. The lost princess. The ghost. The daughter who should have stayed dead. Well, Lana thought grimly as she began gathering her few belongings. Whoever they were about to learn that ghosts could bite back. The hunting cabin looked exactly like something out of a forgotten memory. Lana approached it carefully, her wolf senses on high alert as she circled the perimeter through the trees. It was nearly midnight, and the forest was alive with the sounds of darkness, owls hunting, small creatures rustling through underbrush, the distant howl of a wolf pack miles away. The cabin itself was small, tucked into a clearing barely large enough to call such. Weathered wood, a stone chimney, windows dark and empty. It looked abandoned, but she could smell him inside, Ethan's scent, stronger now that she was close. Cedar and smoke, and that undercurrent of grief that seemed permanently woven into his essence. He was alone. That was good. Or maybe it was a test. Lana touched the carved stone in her pocket, Cade's stone, his promise of help if she needed it. She'd spent the afternoon debating whether to break it, to bring the Crown's Mercy into this meeting as backup. But something had stopped her. This moment, this conversation, needed to be just her and Ethan. Father and daughter, however impossible that still seemed. She shifted to human form at the edge of the clearing, straightened her clothes, and walked to the cabin door. Her hand was raised to knock when the door swung open. Ethan stood there, backlit by a single oil lamp. He'd changed from this morning. Instead of his formal clothes, he wore simple hunting gear. But he still looked every inch the Alpha King, all contained power and careful control. You came, he said. There was something in his voice she couldn't quite identify. Relief? Surprise? You asked me to, Lana replied. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Ethan stepped aside, gesturing her in. The cabin was sparse, but functional. A table with 2 chairs, a fireplace with a small fire crackling, a single bed in the corner. There was food on the table: bread, cheese, dried meat. Simple fare, but more than Lana had eaten in days. Her stomach growled, betraying her. Ethan's mouth twitched. Sit. Eat. We can talk while you're not starving. Lana hesitated, then obeyed. The moment she sat down, exhaustion hit her like a physical force. She hadn't realized how tired she was, how much the events of the morning had drained her. She tore into the bread, trying to maintain some dignity, but mostly just grateful for food that wasn't foraged or stolen. Ethan sat across from her, watching. Not eating. Just watching. You have her eyes, he said quietly. My daughter. You have her exact eyes. Lana swallowed her mouthful of bread. I know. And her mother's face. And the royal mark. He gestured to her left wrist, where a small birthmark shaped vaguely like a crescent moon was visible. Every heir of the Moonstone line has that mark. It can't be faked. I'm not trying to fake anything. Then explain to me how my daughter, my infant daughter who I watched burn, is sitting across from me eating bread like she hasn't had a decent meal in weeks. There was an edge to his voice now, sharp and hurting. Explain to me how she's been alive for 12 years and I never knew. How she watched me grieve and never once reached out. Never once let me know she was alive. The accusation hung in the air between them. Lana set down her bread, her appetite suddenly gone. Because I was a baby when it happened. I don't remember the fire or the coup or any of it. My first clear memory is being maybe 4 years old, living in a cabin with Mara, learning to hunt rabbits. She leaned forward, holding his gaze. Mara told me stories about you. About my mother who died giving birth to me. About the palace and the pack and the kingdom you were trying to build. She told me I was special, that I had to stay hidden, that there were bad people who wanted to hurt me. And you believed her? I was 4. Of course I believed her. Lana's voice cracked slightly. But as I got older, I started asking questions. Why couldn't I go to the villages? Why couldn't I meet other wolves? Why did we move every few months like we were running from something? What did she tell you? The truth. When I was 10, she sat me down and told me everything. Who I really was. What had happened. Who you were. Lana's hands clenched into fists on the table. And she told me that if I ever revealed myself, the people who tried to kill me once would try again. Only this time, they'd make sure to kill you first. Make sure I watched. Ethan's face went pale. So I stayed hidden, Lana continued. I learned to be invisible. To move through the forest like a ghost. To hunt and fight and survive. And I watched you. Every morning at the grave, every public appearance I could get close enough to see. I watched you carry guilt that wasn't yours to carry, and I hated it. But I didn't know what else to do. You could have trusted me. Ethan's voice was raw. You could have come to me. Let me protect you. How? Lana challenged. How would you have protected me when you don't even know who the traitor is? When someone close enough to know about the nursery, about the guard rotations, about everything someone you trust, wanted me dead, I would have found them. I would have. You've been looking for 12 years, Lana said quietly. And you still don't know who was behind the coup. Do you? The silence was answer enough. Ethan looked away, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His grief and frustration filled the small cabin, making her gift flare uncomfortably. I have a name, Lana said after a moment. His head snapped back toward her. What? Mara kept a journal. She wrote down everything she remembered about that night. And there was one detail she couldn't forget, the last person she saw leaving the nursery before the fire started. Lana took a breath. Lucas Thorne. The effect was instantaneous. Ethan shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. Lucas? You're accusing Lucas of treason. I'm telling you what Mara saw. Lucas has been my advisor for 15 years. He was my father's advisor before that. He's one of the most loyal. Ethan stopped himself, running a hand through his hair in frustration. This is exactly why I couldn't just accept you at face value. Because you show up out of nowhere, make claims about my daughter, and immediately start pointing fingers at people who've served this kingdom faithfully for decades. Or maybe, Lana said, forcing herself to stay calm, that's exactly what he's counting on. That you'd never suspect him because he's been loyal for so long. That he's above suspicion. Based on one person's account? From 12 years ago? When everything was chaos. Based on the fact that someone betrayed you. Someone gave the attackers information they shouldn't have had. Someone. A sound outside cut her off. Both of them froze. Footsteps. Multiple sets. moving through the forest toward the cabin with purpose. "Did you tell anyone you were coming here?" Ethan demanded, his voice dropping to a whisper. "No. Did you?" "Only Lucas." Their eyes met. In that moment, everything Lana had been trying to tell him crystallized into awful certainty. "We need to go," Ethan said, already moving. "Now." But before they could reach the door, it exploded inward. 6 wolves burst into the cabin, massive, scarred, professional. These weren't like the assassins from this morning. These were worse. Elite killers, their eyes cold and dead even in wolf form. And leading them was someone in human form. A man Lana had never seen before, but whose emotions reeked of satisfaction and greed. "Alpha King," the man said with a mocking bow. "What a pleasant surprise. We were only expecting the girl." Ethan moved in front of Lana instantly, his body a shield. "Who sent you? Does it matter?" The man smiled. "You'll both be dead in a few minutes either way." The wolves advanced. Lana's mind raced. 6 trained killers plus their handler. Against her and Ethan in an enclosed space with no escape route and no backup. They were going to die here. Unless... Her hand went to her pocket. "To Cade Stone. Break it and we'll find you," he'd said. She'd never trusted anyone except Mara. Had spent her whole life avoiding exactly this, relying on others, exposing herself, putting her fate in someone else's hands. But Mara was gone. And her father, was standing between her and death with the same grim determination she recognized from every morning at the grave. He'd die for her. Without hesitation. Without even fully believing she was really his daughter. Lana couldn't let that happen. She pulled out the stone and crushed it in her fist. The man's eyes widened. "What did you just—" Ethan shifted. The cabin exploded into violence. Lana shifted half a second behind him, her smaller wolf form darting under the first attacker's lunge. She could feel their intentions, taste their bloodlust, and she used it, twisted left when one planned to go right, dropped low when another aimed high. But there were too many. And they were too good. One of them caught her flank, claws raking deep. Pain exploded through her side, hot and brutal. She yelped, stumbled, and suddenly there were 2 of them on her, jaws snapping toward her throat. Then Ethan was there, a whirlwind of black fur and silver eyes and barely contained rage. He threw one attacker through the cabin wall, literally through the wood, and grabbed the other by the scruff. But that left 3 more plus the handler. And the handler was pulling out a crossbow, aimed at Ethan's back. No, Lana didn't think. She just moved. Threw herself between her father and the bolt even as it left the crossbow with a deadly whisper. The impact knocked her sideways. The bolt punched through her shoulder, the pain so intense her vision went white. She hit the floor and didn't get up. Through the haze of agony, she heard Ethan roar, a sound of pure anguish and fury that shook the cabin's remaining walls. Heard the sickening crunch of bones breaking, the wet sounds of violence. Then other sounds. New wolves arriving. Shouting in human voices. "Get the king out. Now!" Hands, human hands, grabbing her. Lifting her. Someone saying her name over and over. "Lana. Stay with me. Come on, stay with me. Cade." That was Cade's voice. She tried to answer, but everything was going dark and cold and far away. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness claimed her was her father's voice, broken and desperate. "Don't you dare die. Do you hear me? Don't you dare die before I get to know you." And then nothing. Lana woke to the smell of herbs and wood smoke. Her whole body ached, but the sharp agony of the crossbow bolt was gone. Replaced by a dull throb that suggested healing, both natural and helped along by medicine. She opened her eyes slowly. She was in a cave, but not her cave. This one was larger, clearly lived in, with proper bedding and supplies stacked along the walls. The ceiling was painted with symbols she didn't recognize, protective wards, maybe, or pack markings. And sitting beside her bedroll, his face haggard with exhaustion and relief, was Ethan. You're awake, he said. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been shouting. Or crying. How long? Lana croaked. 2 days. The bolt was poisoned. We weren't sure you'd. He stopped, swallowed hard. But you did. You're healing. Lana tried to sit up, hissed at the pain, and let Ethan help her. His hands were gentle, careful, nothing like the deadly force she'd seen him unleash in the cabin. The attackers? She asked. Dead. All of them. Your friend Cade and his people arrived just in time. Ethan's expression darkened. Though friend might not be the right word. He had some very pointed questions about why I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Why I only told Lucas. What did you tell him? The truth. That I'm an idiot who trusted the wrong person. Ethan met her eyes. You were right. About Lucas. When I got back to the palace, I did some digging. Quiet digging through people I know I can trust. Lucas has been moving money. A lot of money. To accounts connected to the Shadow Collective. Lana's breath caught. So he really was. The traitor. Yes. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. For how long, I don't know. But he's been working against me. Against the kingdom. And he was there the night of the coup. What are you going to do? Nothing. Yet? Ethan's eyes glinted with something cold and calculating. Because Lucas doesn't know I know. And if we move against him too soon, we might miss the others. Cade says there's a whole network. We need to find them all. The word hung between them. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face with one large hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with a tenderness that made her throat tight. You took a crossbow bolt for me, he said quietly. A poison bolt. You nearly died protecting me. You're my father, Lana said simply. What else would I do? Something broke in Ethan's expression. His face crumbled, and suddenly he was pulling her into his arms, carefully, mindful of her injuries, but with a desperation that spoke of 12 years of grief finally finding release. I believe you, he whispered into her hair. I believe you're my daughter. My Lana. And I am so sorry I ever doubted you. Lana's own tears came then, hot and fast. She buried her face in his shoulder and cried for everything, for Mara, for the childhood she'd lost, for the father she'd watched from afar but never touched. For 12 years of being alone. They stayed like that for a long time. Just holding each other. Just breathing. Finally, Ethan pulled back enough to look at her. We have a lot to figure out. Lucas and his network are planning something. Cade thinks it involves you, specifically, involves revealing you're alive and using you somehow. We need to be smart. Careful. I know. But first, Ethan smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him. Warm and genuine, and everything a father's smile should be. First, I'd like to hear everything. About you. About your life with Mara. About this gift of yours that lets you sense emotions. I've missed 12 years. I'd like to start making up for that. If you'll let me. Lana smiled back through her tears. I'd like that too. A throat cleared from the cave entrance. Cade stood there, looking apologetic but urgent. Sorry to interrupt the family reunion. Really, I am. But we have a problem. Ethan's arm tightened protectively around Lana. What kind of problem? Lucas Thorne just called an emergency council meeting. He's claiming he has evidence of a plot against the king. Says he's uncovered documents proving a traitor has been operating inside the palace for years. Cade's green eyes were grim. He's making his move. Whatever he's planning, it's happening now. Lana and Ethan exchanged glances. Then I guess we'd better make our move first, Ethan said. He looked down at Lana. Think you're up for crashing a council meeting? Despite the pain, despite the danger, Lana felt a fierce grin spread across her face. She'd spent 12 years hiding. Time to remind the kingdom's enemies why you never came for an alpha's daughter. Let's go introduce me to the court, she said. The palace was exactly as Lana had imagined it, and nothing like it at all. She'd seen it from a distance, of course. The white stone towers rising above the forest canopy, the banners snapping in the wind, the walls that had stood for 500 years. But being inside was different. The corridors were vast and echoing, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows. Portraits of past alphas lined the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. One portrait made her stop. A woman with kind eyes and Lana's exact face, holding an infant wrapped in blue cloth. "Your mother," Ethan said softly beside her. "Queen Elena. That was painted 3 days before the coup. Before she died having me," Lana finished. She'd known the story. Had heard it from Mara. But seeing the woman who'd given her life to bring her into the world, made it real in a way words never had. "She would be proud of you," Ethan said. "So fierce. So brave. So much like her." Lana touched the painted canvas gently, then pulled her hand back. They didn't have time for this. Lucas was in the council chamber right now, spinning whatever lies he'd prepared. They needed to move. Cade led them through a servant's entrance, narrower halls that the nobility rarely saw. The crown's mercy had people everywhere, he'd explained. Maids and guards and stable hands who were loyal to the true king, not the corruption festering in his court. "The council chamber is just ahead," Cade whispered. "But Lana, you need to know, when you walk in there, everything changes. Lucas will know you're alive. His allies will know. Every enemy you have will know." "Good," Lana said grimly. "Let them know. I'm done hiding." Ethan's hand found hers and squeezed. A father's reassurance. A promise of protection. Together, they approached the massive oak doors of the council chamber. Inside, she could hear voices, Lucas's smooth baritone dominating the conversation. Proof that the attacks on our Alpha King were orchestrated from within. "I know this will come as a shock, but the evidence is irrefutable. Commander Dane has been selling information to the rebel factions for years." Murmurs of shock and disbelief. Lana's eyes widened. Dane, she knew that name. Cade had mentioned him. One of Ethan's most trusted military commanders. A loyalist. Lucas was framing him. "He's setting up a scapegoat," Cade hissed. "Once he is Dane arrested, he'll move against the king. Probably claim Ethan is compromised, call for a vote of no confidence." "Not if we stop him first," Ethan said. He nodded to the guards at the door, 2 men whose emotions Lana could read clearly. Loyalty to the king. Suspicion of what was happening inside. Crown's mercy, then. Cade's people. They opened the doors. The council chamber was circular, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations. 12 seats arranged around a central table, the 12 great families of the realm, plus the Alpha King's throne at the head. Lucas stood in the center, holding documents that Lana knew must be forgeries. He was tall, silver-haired, distinguished. Everything an advisor should look like. Trustworthy. Respectable. And his emotions reeked of triumph barely concealed. Every head turned as Ethan entered. "Your Majesty," Lucas said smoothly, though Lana caught the flash of irritation across his face. "We weren't expecting you." "I was just presenting evidence of Commander Dane's." "I know what you were doing, Lucas," Ethan said coldly. He strode to his throne, every inch the Alpha King, radiating power and authority. "And I have evidence of my own to present." He gestured behind him. Lana stepped into the chamber. The effect was instantaneous. Gasps. One woman actually stood up so fast her chair toppled over. Several of the council members made warding signs, gestures meant to protect against ghosts or evil spirits. Because that's what she was to them. A ghost. The lost princess returned from the dead. "What is this?" Lucas demanded. His mask was slipping now, confusion and anger bleeding through. "Some kind of trick?" "Your Majesty, if this is an attempt to distract from the evidence against Commander Dane." "Her name is Lana," Ethan said. Each word was sharp, precise, dangerous. "And she is my daughter." The daughter who was supposed to have died 12 years ago in a fire. A fire that was set deliberately. By traitors. By people who wanted to destroy the royal line. "That's impossible," one of the council members, a heavy-set man Lana didn't recognize, sputtered. "The princess is dead." We all saw the ashes. We attended the memorial. You saw what you were meant to see, Ethan interrupted. What the traitors wanted you to see. But my daughter survived. She's been alive all this time, hidden away by a loyal healer who knew the danger she was in. Lucas had recovered his composure. His face was carefully neutral now, but Lana could smell his fear. Sharp and acidic beneath the pretense of shock. Your Majesty, Lucas said carefully, I understand you want to believe this. But surely you see how convenient this is? I present evidence of treason, and suddenly a girl appears claiming to be your lost daughter? This is clearly a ploy by Commander Dane and his conspirators too. I know you were there, Lana said. Her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. All eyes turned to her. The night of the coup, she continued, stepping forward. You were the last person seen leaving the nursery before the fire started. A healer named Mara witnessed it. She kept records. Detailed records of everything she saw that night. A healer? Lucas laughed, but it sounded forced. Your Majesty, this girl is basing her accusations on the testimony of a healer? Someone who wasn't even part of the palace guard? Who has no credibility? The healer is dead, Lana said flatly. Murdered 6 months ago by the same assassins who've been trying to kill the king. The same assassins who attacked us 3 nights ago at the hunting cabin. Lucas's face went white. The hunting cabin, he repeated slowly. What hunting cabin? The one you told me about, Ethan said softly. Dangerously. The one where I arranged to meet someone in private. The meeting I mentioned to no one but you, Lucas. My most trusted advisor. The silence in the chamber was absolute. And yet, Ethan continued, somehow assassins knew exactly where to find us. 6 highly trained killers who arrived within an hour of me telling you my location. Curious coincidence, don't you think? Lucas was scrambling now. Someone must have overheard. Or followed you. Your Majesty, I would never. We tracked the money, Cade said, stepping forward. He held a ledger, its pages marked with careful notations. Payments from your private accounts to members of the Shadow Collective. Going back years. Funding assassination attempts, bribing guards, paying informants. This is a fabrication, Lucas shouted. A conspiracy to discredit me. Your Majesty, you've known me for 15 years. You trusted me when your father died. You relied on me to help rebuild after the coup. Would I have worked so hard to secure your throne if I was the one trying to destroy it? That, said a new voice from the doorway, is an excellent question. Everyone turned. A woman entered, elderly, bent with age, but with eyes sharp as broken glass. She wore the robes of the palace historian, and she carried a book so old its leather binding was cracked and faded. Counselor Margaret, Ethan said, surprised. I didn't summon you. No, Your Majesty. But I summoned myself. Margaret moved slowly to the center of the room, her gaze fixed on Lucas. When young Cade came to me asking about records from the old families, about bloodlines and succession laws, I became curious. So I did some research of my own. She opened the ancient book. The Thorne family has served the crown for generations, Margaret said. Loyal advisors. Faithful servants. But there is something in the historical records that I found interesting. She looked up at Lucas. Your great-great-grandfather was Lord Cassius Thorne. Do you know who his mother was, Lucas? Lucas said nothing. But his jaw was clenched so tight Lana could see the muscle jumping. Her name was Lyanna Moonstone, Margaret continued. A princess. 3rd in line for the throne. She married into the Thorne family, and her children were removed from the line of succession as per the law. But that blood remained. Diluted, yes, but present. The implications hit the room like a thunderclap. You have royal blood, Ethan said slowly. Distant. But enough to make a claim if the direct line was eliminated, Margaret finished. If there were no heirs left, then a council could, theoretically, choose from the bloodlines with Moonstone ancestry. And the Thornes, with their history of service and their blood connection, would be strong candidates. Lana felt sick. He tried to kill me. He tried to kill my father. Also, he could what? Take the throne. Not take it, Lucas said. His voice had changed. The smooth, diplomatic tone was gone. In its place was something cold, hard, ancient. Reclaim it, he continued. My family should have ruled. We had the blood. We had the skill. But we were set aside because of archaic laws about direct descent. Your family, he looked at Ethan with pure venom. Your family has held the throne for 200 years. 200 years of prosperity for you while we served. While we bowed and scraped and waited for our chance. So you orchestrated a coup, Ethan said. You murdered my wife. Tried to murder my infant daughter. Spent 12 years trying to kill me. All for power. For what's owed, Lucas snarled. And it would have worked. Should have worked. The child was supposed to die in the fire. You were supposed to spiral into grief and make mistakes I could exploit. The kingdom was supposed to fall into chaos, and the council was supposed to turn to me to restore order. He laughed, a bitter, broken sound. But the damned healer took her. Hit her. And you just kept going. Kept ruling. Kept being the perfect grieving king. And I had to watch. Year after year. Waiting. Planning. And now? Ethan asked quietly. Lucas's hand moved faster than Lana could track. He pulled a knife from his robes and lunged not at Ethan, but at Lana. If I can't have the throne, neither will you. Lucas screamed. Time seemed to slow. Lana saw the blade coming. Saw the madness in Lucas's eyes. Saw her father moving, too far away to reach her in time. And she felt something inside her shift. Her gift, the ability to sense emotions, suddenly wasn't just passive. It was active. Hungry. Powerful. She reached out with it, grabbed the fear that was buried beneath Lucas's rage, and yanked. Lucas froze mid-stride. His eyes went wide, his face went white, and he dropped the knife like it was burning him. He felt his knees, gasping, his hands clutching his chest. What did you? He choked out. Lana stood over him, her own eyes glowing amber gold, and for the first time in her life, she understood what her gift truly was. Not just sensing emotions, controlling them. I showed you your fear, she said softly. Every nightmare you've ever had. Every moment of doubt. Every second of terror. All at once. Lucas whimpered. Tears streamed down his face. The great traitor, reduced to a sobbing mess on the council chamber floor. Ethan was beside her in an instant, his hand on her shoulder. Not pulling her back. Just grounding her. Enough, he said gently. He's done. Lana released her hold. Lucas collapsed fully, shaking and broken. Arrest him, Ethan ordered. Guards rushed forward, Crown's Mercy members, Lana realized. Cade must have replaced the regular guards before they'd entered. Lucas Thorne, you are charged with high treason, conspiracy to murder, and crimes against the crown. You will be tried according to the laws of this kingdom. As they dragged Lucas away, still whimpering, still shaking, Ethan turned to the council. Let me be clear, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. This is my daughter, Princess Lana of the Moonstone line. She was hidden to protect her from traitors like Lucas. But she is back now. And anyone who questions her legitimacy, anyone who threatens her, anyone who even thinks about continuing Lucas's work, they will answer to me. The council members all bowed. Even the ones whose emotions told Lana they were uncertain or afraid. They knew a command when they heard one. Your Majesty, Margaret said, her old voice warm. Welcome home, Princess. Your mother would be proud. Lana's throat was tight. Thank you. As the council members filed out, whispering, shocked, but accepting, Cade approached with a grim expression. We got Lucas, he said. But he wasn't working alone. The documents we found mention at least 4 other conspirators. People in positions of power. And whatever they were planning, whatever big event they had scheduled, Lucas's arrest might have just accelerated their timeline. Then we find them, Ethan said. We root out every last traitor. There's something else. Cade looked at Lana with an expression that was part awe, part concern. What you just did to Lucas. That power. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I, Lana admitted. I didn't even know I could. The old bloodlines had gifts, Margaret interrupted. She'd stayed behind while the others left. Abilities that went beyond normal wolf traits. They were rare, usually appearing in times of great need. Your mother had one, she could sense truth from lies. It saved your father's life more than once. And Lana? Ethan asked. Emotion manipulation. The ability to sense and influence the emotional state of others. Margaret smiled. It's called empathy in the old texts. And it's one of the most powerful gifts our kind has ever produced. Your daughter, Your Majesty, is very special indeed. Lana looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly, the aftermath of using a power she'd never known she possessed. Can I learn to control it? She asked. You'll have to, Margaret said seriously. Because if Lucas's allies find out what you can do, they'll either try to kill you or try to use you. Either way, you need to be ready. Ethan's arm wrapped around her shoulders. She will be. We'll train her. Protect her. And we'll make sure that what happened 12 years ago never happens again. Lana leaned into him, allowing herself to feel safe for the first time in her life. But even as she did, her gift picked up something from beyond the chamber doors. Watching. Waiting. Angry. The traitors weren't done. And the real battle was just beginning. 3 days after Lucas's arrest, Lana woke to the sound of screaming. She bolted upright in her bed, in her chambers in the palace, still strange after years of sleeping on cave floors and forest moss. The scream came again, followed by shouting and the clash of steel on steel. The palace was under attack. Lana shifted mid-sprint, her wolf form tearing through the nightgown as she raced into the corridor. Guards were fighting, some in the palace colors, others wearing unmarked black. The unmarked ones moved like professionals, like the assassins from the cabin. The Shadow Collective was here. Princess. One of the guards, a Crown's Mercy member named Aaron, shouted at her. Get to the king's chambers. They're trying to. An arrow took him in the throat. He dropped without another sound. Lana snarled and launched herself at the archer. Her jaws found his arm, tasted blood and bone, and didn't let go until he stopped moving. 2 more attackers converged on her, but she was faster, smaller, using her size as an advantage in the narrow hallway. But there were too many. They just kept coming. She needed to find Ethan. Lana broke away from the fight and ran, her paws skidding on marble floors slick with blood. Behind her, she heard more screams, more sounds of battle. The palace was chaos, fire starting, people running, the whole structure of order collapsing into violence. She reached Ethan's chambers and found the doors smashed open. Her heart stopped. Inside, Ethan was fighting 3 attackers at once, his massive black wolf a blur of fury. But even as she watched, one of them landed a blow with a silver-edged blade banned in combat because of how they burned wolf flesh. Ethan roared in pain. Lana didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the fray, her gift flaring instinctively. She grabbed the attacker's confidence and crushed it, replacing it with primal terror. They broke. Ran. Fled like rabbits from a predator. Ethan collapsed, shifting back to human form. The wound on his side was deep, bleeding heavily. Silver poisoning, it would heal, but slowly. Too slowly. Lana, he gasped. It's not just the Shadow Collective. It's members of my own guard. The conspirators Lucas mentioned. They're making their move. Where's Cade? Lana demanded, shifting back, pressing her hands against the wound to slow the bleeding. Where's the Crown's Mercy? Fighting. Everywhere. We were betrayed from the inside. They knew our defenses. Ethan coughed, and blood flecked his lips. You need to run. Get out of the palace. They want you alive, I heard them saying it. They want to use you for something. I'm not leaving you. That's an order, princess. I don't care. Lana's voice cracked. I just got you back. I'm not losing you now. We survive this together or not at all. Before Ethan could argue, Cade burst through the destroyed doorway. His face was streaked with blood, not his own, Lana hoped, and his green eyes were wild. They've taken the East Wing, he panted. And the throne room. They're forcing everyone, nobles, servants, everyone, into the Grand Hall. It's a trap. They're using hostages. How many attackers? Ethan asked, forcing himself upright despite the pain. At least 50. Maybe more. And they have someone with them. Someone powerful. Cade looked at Lana, and she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. Someone who can do what you do. Control emotions. But they're using it to paralyze people. Make them compliant. Lana's blood ran cold. Another empathy? I don't know what it's called, but yeah. They're using it to keep the hostages docile. And they're asking for you. They say if Princess Lana doesn't present herself in the Grand Hall within the hour, they start executing people. It's a trap, Ethan said immediately. They want your power. Want to use it for something. I know it's a trap, Lana replied. But what choice do we have? How many people are in that hall? 200. Maybe more. 200 lives. 200 people who would die if she didn't go. Lana looked at her father, at the man she'd watched grieve for 12 years, who'd finally allowed himself to hope, who'd held her and called her daughter and promised to keep her safe. I have to go, she said quietly. No, Ethan grabbed her hand. Lana, no. We'll find another way. There is no other way. She squeezed his hand, fighting back tears. You taught me that. A ruler's duty is to their people, even if it costs them everything. I never wanted you to learn that lesson, Ethan whispered. Not like this. I know. Lana leaned forward and kissed his forehead. But I'm your daughter. What else would I do? She stood before he could stop her, looked at Cade. Take care of him. Get him to safety. That's an order. Lana. Promise me, Cade. Something passed between them, an understanding, a connection forged in blood and crisis. Cade's emotions swirled with frustration and admiration and something else. Something that, in another time, might have meant something. I promise, he said finally. But you'd better survive this. I still owe you that campfire stew. Despite everything, Lana smiled. I'll hold you to that. She shifted and ran before either of them could stop her. The palace was a war zone. Bodies littered the corridors, some in black, some in palace colors, all equally dead. Lana ran past them, her heart breaking with each one. These were people she should have known. People she should have protected. People dying because of her. The Grand Hall's doors stood open, inviting. Ominous. Lana shifted back to human form at the threshold, standing naked and unashamed. Let them see her. Let them see the princess they wanted so badly. She walked through the doors. The scene inside was exactly as Cade had described. Hundreds of people, nobles in their fine clothes, servants in their work attire, guards stripped of their weapons, all kneeling in neat rows. Their faces were blank, their eyes empty. Under the control of whoever this other empathy was. At the center of the hall, standing on the raised dais where Ethan's throne normally sat, was a woman. She was beautiful in a cold, perfect way. Silver hair, violet eyes, features that could have been carved from ice. She wore robes of deep purple marked with symbols Lana didn't recognize. And her power, her gift, radiated from her like heat from a forge. Princess Lana, the woman said. Her voice was melodic, almost hypnotic. How kind of you to join us. I was beginning to think we'd have to start killing people to get your attention. Who are you? Lana demanded. My name is Kimberly Ashford. Though you might know my family by another name, Thornwood. We changed it generations ago when we were banished from court. Her smile was razor-sharp. Your family tends to do that. Banish anyone who threatens their power. Lucas was your family. My great-uncle, yes. Though calling him family is generous, the Thorns never acknowledged the Ashford branch. We were too far removed from the main bloodline. Too diluted. Venom dripped from the word. But we kept the gift. The empathy. And we've been waiting. Planning. Building our forces. For what? Lana asked, though she was afraid she knew the answer. For this. Kimberly gestured to the kneeling masses. Lucas wanted the throne for himself. Fool. The throne is meaningless. But you, her violet eyes fixed on Lana with hungry intensity. You represent something much more valuable. A bloodline. Pure royal blood combined with the empathy gift. Do you know how rare that is? How powerful. You want to use me. I want to breed you, Kimberly corrected, and Lana's stomach turned. With carefully selected mates. Create a new generation of empathies loyal to me. Build an army that can control emotions, manipulate minds, make entire kingdoms bow without ever drawing a blade. You're insane. I'm ambitious. Kimberly's power flexed, and suddenly Lana felt it, fear trying to creep into her mind, trying to paralyze her like it had the hostages. And you're going to help me. Or I'll kill everyone in this room, starting with. She gestured, and one of the blank-faced hostages stood. A young woman, barely 20, with tears streaming silently down her empty face. Her. She's a maid, I believe. Just started working in the palace last month. Young. Innocent. Probably has a family waiting at home. Stop, Lana said. Make me. Kimberly smiled. Or better yet, don't. Submit to me. Accept your new purpose. And all these people live. Refuse, and I demonstrate exactly what I can do with my gift. The maid walked toward the dais. Toward the edge. Where a 40-foot drop onto marble waited. She won't feel anything, Kimberly said conversationally. I'll make sure of that. She'll step off calmly, peacefully. Her neck will break instantly. And then we'll move on to the next person. And the next. Until you agree. The maid was at the edge now. 1 foot hovering over empty air. Stop. Lana screamed. The word came out wrapped in power, her own empathy flaring like a wildfire. She reached for Kimberly's control over the maid, tried to break it, tried to save her. And hit a wall. Kimberly laughed. Oh, sweetling. Did you think you were special? I've had decades to master this gift. You've had, 3 days since you discovered you had it? You're an infant trying to wrestle a wolf. She was right. Lana could feel it. Kimberly's power was a mountain, immovable and ancient. Lana's was a candle flame in comparison. She couldn't win. Couldn't save them. Couldn't save anyone. The maid stepped forward. And then a wolf burst through one of the high windows in an explosion of glass and fury. Ethan. He shouldn't have been here. Should have been healing. Should have let Cade take him to safety. But he was her father. And fathers didn't let their daughters face monsters alone. He hit the dais like a meteor, his massive form crashing into Kimberly. Her concentration broke. The hostages gasped as her control over them shattered, 200 people suddenly awake and screaming. The maid stumbled back from the edge, sobbing. But Ethan collapsed the moment he landed. The silver poisoning was too advanced. He'd pushed himself too far. He shifted back to human, gasping, his skin gray, his eyes finding Lana's. Run, he whispered. Please. Run. Kimberly stood, furious, her power gathering like a storm. You dare. An arrow took her in the shoulder. She shrieked, and her power lashed out wildly, hitting everyone in range with a blast of pure terror. People ran. Screamed. The orderly hostage situation dissolved into chaos. And in the chaos, Cade was there, grabbing Lana's arm. No! While she's distracted. Not without him, Lana sobbed, falling to her knees beside Ethan. I won't leave him. You have to, Ethan said. His hand found hers, squeezed weakly. Live, Lana. Please. For me. For your mother. Live. No. No, no, no. But Cade was dragging her away, and she was too weak to fight, too broken to resist. The last thing she saw before they escaped through a servant's passage was her father's face. Smiling. Proud. And Kimberly's violet eyes promising vengeance. They ran through the tunnels beneath the palace, ancient passages built for exactly this kind of emergency. Cade led the way, supporting Lana when her legs gave out, pushing her forward when she tried to turn back. "He's dead," she kept whispering. "He's dead and I left him." "He's alive," Cade insisted. "Kimberly wants him alive. He's leverage against you." "Then we have to go back. We have to. We have to survive." Cade stopped, grabbed her shoulders, made her look at him. "Lana, listen to me. Your father bought you time. Don't waste it. Don't let his sacrifice mean nothing." "What sacrifice?" "I should have stayed. Should have fought. Would have died. And then she'd have won. Completely." Cade's green eyes were intense, desperate. "You're the heir. The only one left. If you die, the Moonstone line dies. The kingdom falls. Everything your father fought for, everything he suffered for, gone." Lana wanted to argue, wanted to scream, wanted to turn around and fight her way back to Ethan even if it killed her. But Cade was right. And she hated it. They emerged from the tunnels in the forest, miles from the palace. Dawn was breaking, pale and cold and indifferent to the horror of the night. Around them, other survivors were gathering. Crown's Mercy members who'd made it out. A handful of guards. Nobles who'd escaped in the chaos. Maybe 50 people total. 50 out of hundreds. "The palace has fallen," Cade said quietly. "Kimberly has declared herself Queen Regent. She's claiming the king is unfit to rule, that he's been compromised by grief and poor judgment. She says she's taking control until stability can be restored. And people believe her? They don't have a choice. She has hundreds of fighters. She has the palace. She has the king." Cade looked at her. "And she has your father's council, the ones who didn't flee. She's using her power to control them. Make them support her." Lana sank to the ground, numb. Everything had fallen apart so fast. 3 days ago, she'd had a father. Had a home. Had hope. Now she had nothing. "What do we do?" she whispered. "We survive," Cade said. "We rebuild. And we take back what's ours." "How?" "She's stronger than me. More experienced. She has an army. And you have something she doesn't." Cade knelt beside her. "You have people who love you. Who believe in you. Who will follow you not because they're forced to, but because they choose to." He gestured to the survivors. They were watching her. Waiting. Looking to her for guidance. For hope. For leadership. "I don't know how to be a leader," Lana said. "Neither did your father when he first took the throne," Cade replied. "But he learned. And so will you." He offered his hand. Lana looked at it for a long moment. Looked at the survivors. At the forest that had hidden her for so long. At the palace in the distance, where her father was prisoner and a tyrant sat on a stolen throne. She took Cade's hand. And stood. "Tell me everything you know about Kimberly Ashford," Lana said. Her voice was steady now. Cold. Determined. Every weakness. Every vulnerability. Every possible way to beat her. "That's going to take time," Cade warned. "Then we'd better get started." Lana looked at the survivors, her people now, she realized. Her responsibility. "Because I'm going to get my father back. I'm going to take back the palace. And I'm going to make Kimberly regret she ever learned my name." The survivors cheered. Weak, exhausted, but genuine. And somewhere in the distance, the sun rose on the first day of Princess Lana's rebellion. The rebellion started with bread. Lana stood in the clearing that had become their makeshift camp, watching as survivors rationed out what little food they'd managed to carry. 3 loaves of stale bread. A handful of dried meat. Some withered apples that had probably been destined for the palace horses. 50 people. Maybe 4 days of food if they were careful. "We need supplies," she said to Cade. They were standing apart from the others, speaking in low voices. "And we need information. What's happening in the palace? How many guards Kimberly has? Where she's keeping my father?" "I've already sent scouts," Cade replied. He looked exhausted. None of them had slept since the attack 2 nights ago. "But Lana, we need to be realistic. Even if we had supplies, even if we had intel, we don't have the numbers to mount an assault. Kimberly has hundreds of fighters. We have 50 people, most of whom have never held a weapon. Then we get more people. From where? The villages are terrified. They think Kimberly is the rightful queen now. She's using her power on the nobles, making them broadcast messages of support. To everyone else, it looks like a peaceful transition of power. Lana's jaw clenched. Then we show them the truth. How? She didn't have an answer. Not yet. A commotion at the edge of camp drew their attention. The scouts were returning, but they weren't alone. They'd brought someone with them. An old woman, bent with age, but with eyes that blazed with intelligence. She wore simple clothes, but there was something about her bearing that suggested nobility. Counselor Margaret, Cade said, surprised. You made it out. Barely. Margaret's voice was hoarse. I've been walking for 2 days. When I heard rumors of survivors gathering in the western forest, I came as quickly as these old bones would allow. She looked at Lana, and something in her expression made Lana straighten. Princess, Margaret said formally. I came to tell you something. Something I should have mentioned when you first arrived at the palace, but I didn't realize how urgent it would become. What is it? Lana asked. Your mother's journals. Queen Elena kept detailed records of everything, her thoughts, her fears, her discoveries about the old gifts. Margaret pulled a small leather-bound book from her cloak, including extensive notes about the empathy gift, how it works, how to strengthen it, how to defend against it. Lana's breath caught. You have her journals? I was the royal historian. It was my duty to preserve them. Margaret held out the book. I grabbed this one before I fled. It's the most important one, the one where she wrote about mastering her gift of truth sensing. Many of the principles are the same. Lana took the journal with trembling hands. The leather was worn soft with use, the pages yellowed but carefully preserved. She opened it to a random page and saw her mother's handwriting, elegant, flowing, heartbreakingly familiar, though she'd never seen it before. The gift is not about force, one entry read. It's about connection. Understanding. When I try to force the truth from someone, my power fails. But when I open myself to them, when I truly listen, that's when I can sense what they're hiding. Your mother spent years studying the old gifts, Margaret said. She believed they weren't meant to be weapons. They were meant to be bridges. Ways to understand each other on a deeper level. Kimberly is using hers as a weapon, Lana said bitterly. Because that's all she knows. That's all she was taught. Margaret's eyes were sad. The Ashford line was banished 3 generations ago for trying to use their gift to control the court. They've been twisted by bitterness and rage ever since. But you, she touched Lana's hand gently. You have the chance to be different. To use your power the way it was meant to be used. Lana looked down at the journal. Will this help me beat her? It will help you understand your gift. How to protect yourself from her influence. How to strengthen your own power. Margaret paused. But beating her? That will require more than just power. It will require what your mother had in abundance, wisdom, compassion, the ability to see past the anger to what drives people. Right now, I don't care what drives Kimberly, Lana said flatly. I just want my father back. I know. But if you go into battle with only rage in your heart, you'll become exactly what she is. Margaret squeezed her hand. Read the journal, Princess. Learn from your mother. And when the time comes, choose differently than Kimberly chose. Margaret moved away to rest, leaving Lana standing with her mother's words literally in her hands. Cade moved closer, looking at the journal. Think it'll help? I don't know. But it's more than we had an hour ago. Lana looked up at him. What about the scouts? Did they learn anything? Some. Cade's expression was grim. Kimberly has your father imprisoned in the tower. The same tower where I was supposed to have died, Lana finished. Of course she does. He's alive. They made sure everyone saw him at the window yesterday. Proof of life, probably to prevent people from rallying to avenge his death. How many guards? At least 20 on the tower alone. And the palace is locked down tight. No one in or out without Kimberly's permission. Lana's mind raced. 20 guards. plus however many Kimberly had stationed throughout the palace. And all of them potentially under her emotional control, making them loyal beyond reason. There has to be a way, she muttered. Some weakness we can exploit. Actually, said a new voice, there might be. Lana turned to see a young man approaching, one of the survivors she didn't recognize. He was lean, nervous-looking, with ink stains on his fingers and the cautious manner of someone unused to speaking up. Who are you? Cade asked, not unkindly. Nathan. I am, a clerk in the palace archives. He twisted his hands together anxiously. I heard what you were discussing. About getting into the palace. And I think I know a way. Go on, Lana said. There's a tunnel. An old one, from before the current palace was built. It was used for smuggling during the civil wars, 300 years ago. Most people don't know it exists. It's not on any official maps. But I found references to it in some old documents I was cataloging. Where does it lead? Cade asked, suddenly interested. It connects to the wine cellar beneath the palace kitchens. The entrance is about 2 miles north of here, hidden in a cave behind a waterfall. Nathan looked at Lana. If you wanted to get a small group into the palace without being seen, that would be the way. Hope flared in Lana's chest for the first time in days. Can you show us? I can do better than that. I can guide you through. The tunnel is a maze. You'd get lost without someone who knows the layout. Why are you helping us? Lana asked. Not suspicious exactly, but careful. She'd learned the hard way that trust had to be earned. Because I was there. In the grand hall. When Kimberly took control. Nathan's voice shook slightly. She was in my head. Making me feel things that weren't real. Making me think things I'd never think. And when the king broke her concentration, when I could finally think clearly again, I saw her face. The pleasure she took in controlling us. In making us helpless. His hands clenched into fists. I won't live under that kind of rule. Where every thought might not be my own. Where any moment she could reach into my mind and make me someone else. He looked at Lana with desperate determination. You're the rightful heir. And more than that, you're the one who can stop her. So yes, I'll help. However I can. Lana felt something shift inside her. This was how it started. Not with armies or grand plans, but with individuals choosing to stand up. Choosing to resist. Choosing to believe in something worth fighting for. Thank you, Nathan, she said. We'll need that tunnel. When? Cade asked. Tonight. Lana's voice was firm. Every day we wait is another day my father is in that tower. Another day Kimberly consolidates her power. We move tonight. With what force? Cade challenged. Lana, even with a secret entrance, we can't fight our way through the entire palace. We don't need to fight everyone. Just the people guarding the tower. Lana was thinking fast now, pieces clicking into place. We use the tunnel to get inside. Small team. Fast and quiet. We free my father, get him out the same way we came in. And if Kimberly senses you? Cade asked. If she knows you're there? Then I use what Margaret gave me. Lana held up her mother's journal. I spend the day learning everything I can about defending against another empathy. And when Kimberly comes for me, I'll be ready. She looked around at the camp. At the 50 survivors who'd become her people. At Cade, whose loyalty had never wavered. At Margaret, who'd risked everything to bring her mother's wisdom. At Nathan, who'd found the courage to offer help even though he was terrified. I need volunteers, Lana said, raising her voice so everyone could hear. This is going to be dangerous. Some of us might not come back. I won't order anyone to come with me. But if you're willing, if you want to fight for what's right, I'll be honored to stand beside you. Silence for a moment. Then Cade stepped forward. I'm with you. Obviously. One of the guards, a woman named Kara with a scar across her cheek, moved next. My brother is in that palace. Still under Kimberly's control. I want him back. Another guard. A servant. One of the nobles who'd escaped. Within minutes, Lana had 20 volunteers. Not enough for a war, but enough for a rescue. Enough to give her father hope. Nathan, show us where this tunnel entrance is, Lana ordered. Cade, organize the volunteers. Light armor only, we need to move fast. And someone find me a quiet place where I can read without interruption. People scattered to their tasks, suddenly energized by having a plan. By having hope. Lana found a spot at the edge of camp, beneath an old oak tree, and opened her mother's journal to the first page. My dearest daughter, it began, and Lana's vision blurred with tears. If you're reading this, then I am gone. I'm so sorry I won't be there to guide you, to watch you grow, to teach you everything I've learned about the gift we share. But I can do this much. I can leave you my knowledge, my mistakes, my discoveries. The empathy gift is the rarest of the old powers and the most dangerous. Not because of what it can do to others, but because of what it can do to you. It's so easy to lose yourself in other people's emotions, to forget where they end and you begin. But there is a center, a core of self that cannot be touched if you learn to protect it. Your father calls it the soul space, the place inside you that is purely, uniquely you. Find that place, daughter. Build walls around it. Make it a fortress. And when someone tries to invade your mind, retreat to that fortress. Let them batter at your walls all they want, as long as your core remains untouched, you remain yourself. Lana read on, absorbing every word. Her mother wrote about exercises, meditation techniques to strengthen mental shields, ways to recognize when someone was trying to manipulate emotions, methods for pushing back against psychic invasion. It was exactly what she needed. As the sun climbed higher, Lana practiced. She built her fortress, brick by brick, memory by memory. She filled it with everything that made her who she was: Mara's teachings, the forest's embrace, her father's grief-turned love, Cade's steadfast loyalty. She made herself unshakable. And when the sun began to set, casting the forest in shades of amber and gold, she stood. Cade approached, his green eyes searching her face. You ready? No, Lana admitted. But I'm going anyway. He smiled, that roguish grin that had charmed her despite the danger. That's the spirit. Though I have to say, when this is over and we've saved your father and defeated the evil tyrant, I'm taking you on a proper date. Somewhere nice. With actual food, not dried meat and stale bread. Despite everything, Lana laughed. You're asking me out? Now, I'm a man who seizes opportunities. His expression turned serious. But really, after this, when things are settled, I'd like to get to know the real you. Not the princess or the lost heir or the girl with the magic powers. Just Lana. Something warm bloomed in her chest. Something that had nothing to do with gifts or destinies or thrones. I'd like that too, she said softly. Cade reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so gentle it made her heart ache. Then let's make sure we both survive tonight, he said. The volunteers gathered as darkness fell. 20 wolves, 1 scholar, and a princess who'd spent 12 years learning to be invisible. It was time to remind the kingdom that ghosts could be very, very dangerous. Nathan led them through the forest to the waterfall he'd mentioned. Behind the cascading water, much like Lana's old cave, she noted with a pang, was an opening barely large enough for a wolf to squeeze through. The tunnel is narrow at first, Nathan explained, but it widens after about 50 yards. From there, it's roughly a mile to the palace. And you're sure it's not watched? Kara asked. I doubt Kimberly even knows it exists. Like I said, it's not on any official maps. Just old documents that nobody reads. Let's hope you're right, Cade muttered. They shifted and entered the tunnel one by one. Nathan stayed human, leading them with a small torch. The tunnel was exactly as he described, claustrophobic at first, then opening into passages wide enough for 2 wolves to walk side by side. The stone walls were ancient, covered with moss and carved with symbols that predated the current kingdom. Lana's wolf senses picked up traces of old magic, protective spells long faded but not entirely gone. This place had been important once. A lifeline during war. A path to safety when all others were closed. And tonight, it would be that again. They traveled in silence, Nathan's torch casting dancing shadows on the walls. Lana kept her gift extended, searching for any sign of discovery, any hint of a trap. But there was nothing. Just stone and darkness and the sound of 20 wolves breathing in unison. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes, Nathan stopped. "We're here," he whispered. "The entrance to the wine cellar is just ahead. There's a false wall. You push on the third stone from the left, and it swings open." "What's on the other side?" Kate asked. "The cellar itself. Usually empty at night, but there might be a servant or two. We'll handle it." Kate looked at Lana. "You ready?" Lana thought of her father in the tower, of Kimberly's violet eyes and cruel smile, of 12 years watching from the shadows while the man she loved grieved. She thought of her mother's words, "Find your fortress. Make it unshakable." "I'm ready," she said. Nathan pushed the stone. The wall swung open with barely a whisper of sound. Beyond it, the palace wine cellar stretched into darkness. Rows of bottles, barrels of aged spirits, and thankfully no servants in sight. They slipped through, shifted back to human form, and Nathan closed the secret door behind them. "The tower is 3 floors up and across the east wing," Nathan whispered. "If we're lucky, we can make it without encountering many guards." "And if we're not lucky?" Kara asked. Lana's eyes glowed amber in the darkness. "Then we fight." They moved through the palace like ghosts, using servant corridors and back staircases that Nathan knew by heart. Twice they had to hide when patrols passed. Once, Lana had to use her gift to cloud a guard's mind with confusion, making him forget he'd seen movement in the shadows. Her mother's teachings were working. She could feel the difference. Her power was more focused now, more controlled. Not the wild flare it had been before, but something precise and deadly. They reached the tower without raising any alarms. 20 guards, Kate had said. Lana could sense them now, their emotions a dull haze of artificial loyalty. Kimberly's work, keeping them compliant and dedicated beyond reason. "How do we get past them?" one of the volunteers whispered. Lana studied the guards through her gift, felt the shape of Kimberly's influence on their minds. It was strong, yes, but it was also uniform. The same emotional signature on each of them, like a stamp pressed into wax. Which meant if she could break one, she could break them all. "I need to get close to one of them," Lana said. "Close enough to touch." "That's a terrible plan," Kate said. "You have a better one?" He didn't. Lana shifted into her wolf form and padded toward the nearest guard. He was standing at attention, staring straight ahead with those empty eyes she was coming to hate. She approached slowly, carefully, until she was close enough to brush against his leg. The moment she made contact, she extended her gift, not attacking, not forcing, but listening. Feeling the shape of Kimberly's control. Understanding how it worked. It was like a lock. And her mother had taught her how to pick locks. She found the guard's true self buried beneath Kimberly's influence. Found his fear, his confusion, his desperate desire to be free. And she amplified it. Gently. Carefully. Using her power like a key turning in a lock. The guard gasped. Blinked. His eyes cleared. Where am I? What's happening?" Quietly, Lana shifted back to human, putting a hand over his mouth. "You're in the tower. You've been under emotional manipulation. But you're free now." Understanding and horror dawned in his eyes. "Can you do that to the others?" she asked. He nodded. "Then help us. We're here to rescue the king." The guard, his name was Theo, he told them, moved among his fellow guards, touching each one, allowing Lana to work through him as a conduit. One by one, they woke from Kimberly's control. One by one, they chose to join the rescue. By the time they reached the tower door, Lana had an army of 40 instead of 20. "He's in the top room," Theo said. "Locked in. But I have the key." They climbed the stairs, hearts pounding, weapons ready. And when Theo unlocked the door and pushed it open, Lana saw her father. Ethan was chained to the wall, silver manacles burning his wrists and ankles. He was thinner than she remembered, pale from blood loss and silver poisoning. But his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, blazed with unbroken defiance. Until he saw her. Then they filled with tears. "Lana," he whispered. "You shouldn't have come. If she finds you." "She already knows I'm here," said a cold voice from the doorway behind them. They spun. Kimberly stood there, violet eyes glowing with power. And behind her, an army of controlled guards, at least 100 strong. "Did you really think I wouldn't feel you breaking my hold on the tower guards?" She smiled. "I wanted you to come, foolish girl. Wanted you to walk right into my trap." Her power slammed into them like a physical force. Lana felt it, the overwhelming wave of terror and submission trying to crush her mind, trying to make her kneel, trying to break her will. But she had her fortress. She retreated into that soul space her mother had taught her to build. Let Kimberly's power batter at her walls. Let it rage and storm and threaten. And held firm. "Interesting," Kimberly said, noticing that Lana was still standing while everyone else had dropped to their knees. "The little princess has been studying. But it won't matter. You can't save them all. Can't break my hold on 100 minds at once." "Maybe not," Lana said. Her voice was steady despite the fear trying to claw its way through her defenses. "But I don't need to break them all." She looked at Kimberly and smiled. "I just need to break you." And she reached out with every ounce of power she possessed, not at the guards, but at Kimberly herself. Found the woman's fortress. Found the walls she'd built around her own soul. And found the cracks. Because Kimberly wasn't as strong as she pretended. Beneath the power and the cruelty and the violet eyes, she was terrified. Terrified that she'd never be good enough. That her family would always be the banished ones. That no amount of power would ever make her feel whole. Lana found that terror and whispered to it. "You're right to be afraid. Because you're about to lose everything." Kimberly's eyes widened. Her control over the guards wavered. And in that moment of weakness, Lana pushed. Not with force. With understanding. With compassion, even though Kimberly deserved none. She showed Kimberly a different path. A different choice. A version of herself that didn't need to control others to feel powerful. For one shining moment, Kimberly felt it. Felt what she could have been. And her control shattered. 100 guards gasped and collapsed, suddenly free. Suddenly themselves again. Kimberly staggered back, her face pale with shock. "How did you? That's impossible." "My mother taught me," Lana said quietly, "that the gift isn't about force. It's about connection. And you can't maintain control over someone who truly understands you." She walked toward Kimberly, unafraid now. "You wanted to build an empire of controlled minds. But you forgot fear and forced loyalty are fragile. They break the moment someone offers something better." Kimberly's hands were shaking. I'll kill you." "No," Lana said. "You won't. Because you're tired, Kimberly. Tired of being angry. Tired of carrying your family's shame. Tired of trying to prove you're worthy of something you were never denied in the first place." Tears were streaming down Kimberly's face now. The mask was gone. All that remained was a broken woman who'd built her whole identity on rage. "Surrender," Lana said gently. "Please. Let this end." For a moment, she thought Kimberly might. Thought the woman might finally choose differently. But then Kimberly's face twisted with hate, and she lunged not with power, but with a physical blade drawn from her robes. Aimed straight at Lana's heart. Cade was faster. He shifted mid-leap, his wolf form crashing into Kimberly and sending her sprawling. The blade skittered across the floor. And, just like that, it was over. The freed guards secured Kimberly, chaining her in the same silver manacles she'd used on Ethan. The former Queen Regent wept silently, all her power and pride stripped away. Lana turned to her father. Theo was already unlocking his chains, carefully removing the silver that had burned his skin raw. The moment Ethan was free, he pulled Lana into his arms. "You came for me," he whispered into her hair. "Always," she replied. "Every time. For the rest of our lives, I'll always come for you." They held each other while the palace awakened around them, while loyal guards spread the word that the king was free, while the people who'd been controlled began to understand what had happened to them. And in the tower window, dawn broke over the kingdom. A new day, a new chance. A family reunited, and a princess who'd finally learned the true strength of her gift. The throne room had never been so full. Every noble who'd survived, every guard who'd been freed from Kimberly's control, every servant and craftsperson who'd stayed loyal, they all packed into the great hall to witness what came next. Justice. Lana stood beside her father's throne, watching as they brought Kimberly forward. The woman looked nothing like the powerful sorceress who'd nearly conquered the kingdom. She was small now, broken, her violet eyes dull with defeat. But appearances could be deceiving. Lana kept her gift extended, monitoring Kimberly's emotions carefully. The woman was clever, desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. Kimberly Ashford, Ethan's voice rang out, strong despite his injuries. He'd refused the healer's demands for bed rest, insisting on being present for this. You stand accused of high treason, attempted regicide, unlawful use of gifts to control free citizens, and conspiracy to overthrow the crown. How do you plead? Kimberly lifted her chin. Even in chains, even broken, she maintained that core of defiance. I plead that I was born into a family punished for the sins of their ancestors. That I grew up knowing I had royal blood but would never be allowed to claim it. That I watched lesser wolves take positions of power while I was denied simply because of my name. So you decided to take what you thought was owed to you, Ethan said. By force. By controlling minds. By turning free people into puppets. I did what I had to do to survive. Kimberly's voice cracked. You speak of justice, Your Majesty, but what justice was there for my family? We were banished for crimes committed generations ago. We were marked as traitors before we were even born. A murmur went through the crowd. Some sympathetic, some angry. Lana felt the shift in emotions. Kimberly was trying to sway public opinion, trying to paint herself as a victim of circumstance rather than a power-hungry tyrant. Your family was banished, Counselor Margaret's voice cut through the murmurs, because your great-great-grandfather used his empathy gift to control the then Alpha King. He tried to make the king sign over his throne. When that failed, he attempted to use his power to start a civil war that would have killed thousands. Margaret stepped forward, leaning heavily on her cane. Your family's punishment wasn't about bloodlines, Lady Ashford. It was about protecting the kingdom from those who would abuse their gifts. You were never denied your heritage, you were asked only to use your power responsibly. Instead, you chose to repeat your ancestors' mistakes. Because I had no choice, Kimberly shouted. Because people like you, people who've never been rejected, never been cast aside, you don't understand what it's like to watch others live the life that should have been yours. You're right, Lana said quietly. Every head turned toward her. I don't understand what that's like, Lana continued, stepping forward. I was hidden away as an infant, raised in caves and forests, watching my father grieve for me from the shadows. I could have been bitter, could have blamed him for not finding me, could have spent 12 years growing angry at a world that took everything from me. She met Kimberly's eyes. But I didn't. Because being hurt doesn't give you the right to hurt others. Being denied something doesn't justify taking it by force. You had a choice, Kimberly. You always had a choice. And you chose cruelty over compassion. Control over connection. Easy for you to say, Kimberly spat. You're the princess. The heir. Everything falls into your lap just because of who your parents were. Nothing fell into my lap. Lana's voice was steel now. I earned every moment of my father's trust. I fought for every person in this room. I learned to master a gift that could have consumed me because I refused to become what you became. So don't tell me about choices. I made mine. And you made yours. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Ethan stood, his hand coming to rest on Lana's shoulder. A father's pride and support. Kimberly Ashford, he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of kingship. "You are found guilty of all charges. The penalty for high treason is death." Kimberly's face went white. However, Ethan continued, "My daughter has asked me to show mercy. She believes that even someone who has done what you've done deserves a chance at redemption." Hope flickered in Kimberly's eyes, quickly followed by suspicion. "You will not die," Ethan said. "But you will never again be free to use your gift against another living soul. Our healers will place a binding on your power, not removing it, but ensuring you cannot use it to manipulate others. You will be exiled to the Northern Territories, where you will live out your days in isolation, with only the memory of what you've done for company." "That's not mercy," Kimberly whispered. "That's torture." "That's consequences," Lana said. "Be grateful my father is kinder than you were." As the guards led Kimberly away, no longer a queen, no longer even a threat, Lana felt something release in her chest. It wasn't satisfaction, exactly. Kimberly's punishment brought her no joy. But it was justice. Real justice. Not revenge. The throne room erupted in cheers. People were crying, embracing, celebrating the end of 3 days that had felt like 3 years. But Lana's attention was caught by a commotion at the entrance. More people were arriving. A lot more people. Villagers. Farmers. Merchants. Citizens from every corner of the kingdom, all flooding into the palace courtyard, all demanding to see their king and the princess who'd saved him. "What's happening?" Ethan asked Cade, who'd gone to investigate. "Word spread," Cade said, returning with a grin. "About everything. The coup, Kimberly's control, Lana's gift, the rescue. People want to see for themselves that you're alive. That the kingdom is safe again." "Then we should address them," Ethan said. He looked at Lana. "Together. As we should have been able to do 12 years ago." They walked out onto the palace balcony, the same balcony where kings had addressed their people for 500 years. The crowd below was massive, stretching from the palace gates to the market square beyond. The moment they appeared, a roar went up. Not of fear or obligation, but of genuine joy. "People of the Moonstone Kingdom," Ethan's voice carried across the crowd, amplified by the acoustics of the palace architecture. 3 days ago, traitors attempted to seize control of your kingdom. They used dark gifts and darker intentions to try to break what we've built together." The crowd quieted, listening intently. "They failed," Ethan continued, "because of one person. My daughter. Princess Lana, who was taken from me as an infant, but who never stopped fighting to protect the kingdom she'd never seen. Who mastered a gift that could have corrupted her. Who chose compassion over cruelty, even when cruelty would have been easier." He turned to Lana, his eyes shining with tears. "She is everything I hoped she would be. Everything her mother would have been proud of. And she is your princess. Your future queen. If you'll have her." The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming. They chanted her name, Lana, 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 until the sound echoed off every stone surface. Lana stepped forward, her heart in her throat. She'd spent 12 years invisible. Silent. Hidden. This was the opposite of everything she'd ever known. "I won't lie to you," she said, and her voice, smaller than her father's, but carrying its own kind of strength, somehow reached every ear. "I don't know how to be a princess. I grew up in forests and caves. I learned politics from squirrels and diplomacy from rabbits." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. "But I know what it's like to be powerless," Lana continued, her voice growing stronger. "To watch bad things happen and feel like you can't stop them. To be afraid and alone and desperate for someone, anyone, to help." She looked out at the sea of faces, humans and wolves, nobles and commoners, all united in this moment. "So I make you this promise, as long as I have breath in my body and power in my gift, I will fight for those who can't fight for themselves. I will stand between you and anyone who would control you, hurt you, or take away your freedom to choose your own path. Not because I'm special. Not because I have royal blood. But because we're all connected. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. And your freedom, that's worth fighting for. The crowd erupted again. People were crying, cheering, holding up their children to see the princess who spoke to them not as subjects, but as equals. And in that moment, Lana understood something her mother had written in her journal. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about inspiring them to be their best selves. The celebrations lasted 3 days. 3 days of feasting, of music, of people coming together to rebuild what had been broken. The palace was transformed from a fortress under siege to a home filled with life and laughter. On the third night, Lana found herself in the palace gardens, needing a moment of quiet away from the endless parade of well-wishers and nobles wanting to curry favor with the new princess. She was standing by a fountain, watching moonlight dance on water, when she heard footsteps behind her. "Found you," Cade said, coming to stand beside her. "Though I have to say, you're getting much easier to find now that you're not actively hiding." Lana smiled. "I might need to work on that. Being visible is still strange." "Strange, but good." "Good," she confirmed. "Terrifying, but good." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the fountain and the distant sounds of celebration. "So," Cade said eventually, "remember that date I mentioned? The one where we eat actual food and pretend we're normal people for a while?" "I remember." "Well, I was thinking, now that you're a princess and I'm just a scout with the crown's mercy, maybe that's not such a good idea. Different social classes and all that." He paused. "But then I thought, you know what? I don't care. Do you?" Lana turned to face him fully. In the moonlight, his green eyes were bright with hope and humor and something deeper. "I spent 12 years watching people from the shadows," she said. "Seeing who they really were when they thought no one was looking. You know what I learned?" "What?" "That titles don't matter. Power doesn't matter. What matters is who someone chooses to be when it's hard. When it costs them something." She stepped closer. "And you, Cade, you chose to help me when you had no reason to trust me. You stood by me when everything fell apart. You made me laugh when I wanted to give up. Those are the things that matter. So that's a yes to the date? That's a yes to as many dates as you want." She grinned. "Though fair warning, I'm still pretty bad at politics and formal dinners and basically everything princess-related. You might have to teach me." "I think you're doing just fine," Cade said softly. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the same gesture he'd made before the rescue, but it felt different now. Full of promise instead of desperation. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "I thought you'd never ask." He did. And it was everything a first kiss should be, gentle and passionate, and full of hope for a future they could finally build together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Lana heard a cough from behind them. They turned to find Ethan standing there, trying very hard not to smile. "Father," Lana said, her face heating. "How long have you been?" "Long enough to remember that I need to have a conversation with this young man about his intentions toward my daughter," Ethan said seriously. Then his stern expression cracked, and he laughed. "Though I suppose saving both our lives earns him some leeway." "Your Majesty," Cade said, straightening. "My intentions are completely honorable." Mostly honorable." "Good answer." Ethan moved to join them by the fountain. "Actually, I came to find you both for a reason. There's someone here who wants to meet you, Lana." "Someone important." "Another noble?" Lana asked wearily. "Because I've met about 100 today, and I can't remember any of their names." "Not a noble. A healer." Ethan's expression turned serious. "Her name is Ellie. She says she was a friend of Mara's. Says she has something for you." Lana's breath caught. "Mara?" They found Ellie in one of the palace sitting rooms, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. The moment Lana entered, the woman stood and curtsied. "Princess," Ellie said. "I'm so sorry I couldn't come forward sooner. I was afraid, after what happened to Mara, I was afraid they'd come for me too if they knew we'd been in contact." "You knew Mara?" Lana asked, her voice thick with emotion. "We trained together years ago. She wrote to me sometimes, told me about you. How strong you were growing. How proud she was of you." Ellie pulled a small wooden box from her bag. Before she died, she sent me this. Asked me to give it to you if anything happened to her. Lana took the box with trembling hands. Inside was a letter in Mara's handwriting, along with a small silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. My dearest Lana, the letter began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm so sorry I couldn't stay to see you grow into the woman you're meant to become. But I need you to know every moment I spent with you is a gift. You were never a burden or a duty. You were my daughter in every way that mattered. The pendant was your mother's. I took it from the nursery the night of the fire, meaning to return it someday. Now I'm returning it to you. Wear it and remember, you come from a long line of strong women. Women who chose compassion over cruelty, love over fear, hope over despair. Be that woman, Lana. Be the queen your mother would have been. And know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you with pride and love. Forever yours, Mara. Lana's tears fell freely now. Ethan's arm came around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, letting herself grieve and celebrate all at once. She loved you very much, Ellie said gently. She used to tell me that saving you was the best thing she ever did. That watching you grow was worth every moment of danger, every year of running. I wish I could have saved her, Lana whispered. You did, Ellie replied. By surviving. By becoming who you are. By fighting for what she believed in. That's the best way to honor someone, by living the life they hoped you'd have. Lana fastened the pendant around her neck. The silver was cool against her skin, familiar in a way that had nothing to do with memory. Thank you, she said to Ellie, for keeping this safe. For being Mara's friend. It was my honor. Ellie stood. And Princess? Your mother would be proud too. I saw Queen Elena once, years ago. You have her kindness, her strength, her heart. After Ellie left, Lana stood by the window, looking out at the kingdom spread below. Lights were beginning to appear in windows across the city as families settled in for the night. Safe, free, uncontrolled. What are you thinking? Ethan asked, coming to stand beside her. That I finally understand what home feels like, Lana said. Not a place. Not a cave or a forest or even a palace. It's people. The ones who choose to stay. Who fight for each other. Who build something worth protecting. You're going to make an excellent queen someday, Ethan said. Someday far in the future, Lana replied firmly. After you've ruled for many more years, and I've actually figured out what I'm doing. Ethan laughed. Deal. They stood together as darkness fell over the kingdom, father and daughter reunited at last, watching over the people they'd both sworn to protect. And in the gardens below, Cade waited, ready to show Lana that life was about more than survival. It was about joy, about love, about all the beautiful moments that came after the battle was won. The kingdom was safe. The lost princess was found. And the future, that uncertain, terrifying, wonderful future, was finally theirs. 6 months later, the kingdom celebrated the Spring Awakening Festival. Lana stood on the palace balcony in a gown that still felt strange, silk and embroidery instead of leather and practical boots, watching as the city came alive with music and color. Banners streamed from every building. Children ran through the streets with ribbons and flowers. Market stalls overflowed with food and crafts and laughter. It was the first festival since Kimberly's coup. The first celebration where people could truly feel safe. You're doing that thing again, Cade said, appearing beside her with 2 goblets of wine. Where you watch everyone like you're still on the outside looking in. Lana accepted the wine with a smile. Old habits. I spent 12 years watching from the shadows. It's hard to remember I'm allowed to be part of it now. Well, you are. You're not just allowed, you're the guest of honor. He gestured to the crowd below, where people were already gathering for the ceremony. They're waiting for you. I know. Lana took a sip of wine to settle her nerves. It's just, what if I mess up the speech? What if I say something wrong and everyone realizes I'm just a girl who grew up in caves pretending to know what she's doing? Then they'll love you even more for being honest. Cade set down his goblet and took her hands. Lana, in the last 6 months, you've helped rebuild the city guard, established new laws protecting citizens from gift abuse, personally visited every family who lost someone in the coup, and somehow found time to learn 17 different noble dances that all look the same to me. They don't all look the same. You're doing amazing, Cade interrupted gently. And, more importantly, you're doing it your way. Not the way your father does it. Not the way some stuffy protocol book says you should. Your way. And people love that about you. Lana squeezed his hands, drawing strength from his steady presence. Over the past 6 months, Kate had been her anchor, the one person who saw past the princess to the girl who still sometimes woke up expecting to find herself in a cave instead of a palace bedroom. They were taking things slow. Well, slow by some standards. There had been that stolen kiss in the library 3 weeks ago, and the moonlight picnic by the lake last month, and approximately 1,000 moments where they'd looked at each other and thought about a future that included the word forever. Your Majesty, a servant appeared at the doorway and bowed. The ceremony is ready to begin whenever the princess is prepared. I'll be right there, Lana said. The servant retreated and she turned to Cade. Walk with me. Always. They descended through the palace, no longer taking the secret passages, but the main corridors where portraits of past royals lined the walls. One portrait had been added recently, Queen Elena, painted from an old sketch, her kind eyes seeming to watch over her daughter with pride. Lana paused in front of it, as she did every time she passed. I wish you could have met her, she said to Cade. My mother. Me too. Though based on everything I've heard, I think she'd approve of us. Cade grinned. Your father certainly does. Mostly. When he's not giving me terrifying looks that remind me he could snap me in half without breaking a sweat. He likes you, Lana assured him. He just has to maintain the protective father image. It's in the job description. They emerged into the palace courtyard where the ceremony would take place. A stage had been erected, decorated with spring flowers and the royal banners. The crowd filling the space was enormous, easily 1,000 people, all dressed in their finest, all waiting to witness what came next. Ethan stood on the stage, resplendent in his ceremonial robes. When he saw Lana, his whole face lit up with the kind of unguarded joy that still made her throat tight. For 12 years, she'd watched him carry grief like a physical weight. Seeing him happy, truly happy, was worth every hardship she'd endured. Ready? He asked as she climbed the stage steps. As I'll ever be, Lana replied. Ethan turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying across the courtyard with practiced ease. People of the Moonstone Kingdom, he began. We gather today not just to celebrate the Spring Awakening, but to mark a new chapter in our history. 6 months ago, we faced darkness, betrayal, an attempt to break the bonds that hold us together as a kingdom. The crowd was silent, attentive. But we survived, Ethan continued. Because of courage. Because of loyalty. Because people like you, he gestured to the crowd, refused to give up on what we've built together. Because my daughter, Princess Lana, showed us that, even in our darkest hour, compassion is stronger than cruelty. Connection is stronger than control. He turned to Lana, and she saw tears in his eyes. For 12 years, I believed I had failed as a father. That I had lost my daughter to violence and chaos. Those years were, his voice caught slightly, they were the hardest of my life. But I learned something. I learned that love doesn't end with loss. That grief, as painful as it is just love with nowhere to go. Lana felt her own tears starting. And when Lana returned, Ethan said, when I looked into her eyes and saw my daughter alive and fierce and everything I'd hoped she would be, I learned that sometimes the universe gives us second chances. Not because we deserve them, but because there's still work to do. Still love to give. Still a future to build. He held out his hand to Lana. She took it, stepping forward to stand beside him. Today, Ethan said to the crowd, I formally acknowledge Princess Lana as my heir. As the future Alpha Queen of the Moonstone Kingdom. And I ask you, do you accept her? Will you follow her? Will you help her build the kind of kingdom where everyone, regardless of bloodline or gift or circumstance, has the chance to thrive? The crowd's response was immediate and overwhelming. Yes, they shouted. Long live Princess Lana! Long live the heir! Counselor Margaret stepped forward, carrying a velvet cushion. On it rested a circlet of silver, not quite a crown, but the symbol of the heir apparent. Delicate and beautiful, inlaid with moonstones that caught the light. Princess Lana, Margaret said formally, do you accept the responsibility of heirship? Do you swear to protect this kingdom and its people with your life, your gifts, and your wisdom? Lana looked out at the crowd, at the faces watching her with hope and trust and belief that she could be what they needed. She thought of Mara, who'd sacrificed everything to give her this chance. She thought of her mother, whose journals had taught her to use her gift with wisdom instead of force. She thought of her father, who'd never stopped grieving but had also never stopped leading. And she thought of herself, the girl who'd grown up in caves and forests, who learned strength from solitude and compassion from watching others suffer. I do, she said clearly. I swear it. Margaret placed the circlet on Lana's head. It was lighter than she'd expected, but the weight of what it represented was immense. The crowd erupted into cheers. Music began, drums and flutes and voices raised in celebration. People danced and laughed and celebrated not just a princess, but the promise of a future built on hope instead of fear. As the ceremony transitioned into a full festival, Lana found herself pulled into conversations and introductions. Noble families wanting to curry favor. Villagers wanting to thank her personally. Children asking Shayla if they could touch her dress because it looked like it was made of starlight. She handled it all with growing confidence, but after an hour, she needed air. She slipped away to the palace gardens, her refuge when the demands of public life became too much. The gardens were quieter, with only a few couples strolling the paths and a handful of servants maintaining the flower beds. Lana found her favorite bench beneath an old willow tree and sat, closing her eyes and just breathing. Her gift extended automatically, tasting the emotions around her. Joy, mostly. Contentment. Hope. The city was healing, one day at a time. There you are. She opened her eyes to find Nathan approaching, the shy scholar who'd led them through the secret tunnel. Over the past 6 months, he'd become one of her closest friends and most trusted advisors. His knowledge of history and his gentle insight had proven invaluable as she learned to navigate court politics. Nathan, she smiled. Shouldn't you be at the festival? I could ask you the same thing, Your Highness. He sat beside her, his tone gently teasing. Though I suppose future queens are allowed to take breaks from being inspiring. I'm not sure I was that inspiring. I mostly just stood there while my father did all the talking. You stood there with grace and dignity and that quiet strength that makes people want to follow you, Nathan corrected. Trust me, I was watching the crowd. You've won them over completely. Lana fiddled with the circlet on her head. It still feels surreal. 6 months ago, I was nobody. Now I'm the heir to the throne. You were never nobody, Nathan said firmly. You were always you, brave and compassionate and far too hard on yourself. The only difference now is that people know your name. Speaking of names, Lana said, changing the subject, I wanted to ask you something. I'm creating a new position, royal historian and keeper of records. Someone to ensure that what happened with Lucas and Kimberly never gets forgotten or whitewashed. Someone to preserve the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Nathan's eyes widened. You want me to? I can't think of anyone better, Lana interrupted. You found the secret tunnel that saved my father's life. You've helped me understand the political landscape. And you're honest, Nathan. Even when honesty is hard. That's what I need. Yes, Nathan said, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Your Highness. I'd be honored. Good. Lana smiled. Because your first assignment is to document everything that's happened over the past year. I want future generations to know the truth. Not some sanitized version where everyone was noble and brave. I want them to know we were scared. That we made mistakes. That we won not because we were perfect, but because we kept trying even when it was hard. That's a very honest way to look at history, Nathan observed. It's the only way that matters. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching butterflies dance among the flowers. Can I ask you something personal? Nathan said eventually. Of course. Are you happy? Really happy? Or are you just doing what you think you're supposed to do? Lana considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, she would have said happiness was a luxury she couldn't afford. But now, I'm happy, she said, and realized it was true. Not every moment. Some days are exhausting and frustrating and make me want to run back to the forest and live in a cave again. But overall, yes, I'm happy. I have my father back. I have friends. I have purpose. And I have Cade. Nathan supplied with a knowing smile. Cade, Lana confirmed, unable to stop her own smile. Who is probably looking for me right now because I promised him the first dance at the festival. Then you should go, Nathan said, standing and offering his hand to help her up. Future queens shouldn't keep their suitors waiting. He's not my suitor. He's my— Lana paused, realizing she didn't quite know what to call Cade. Friend didn't feel adequate. Lover was too formal. Boyfriend seemed too casual for what they meant to each other. He's yours, Nathan said simply. And you're his. The rest is just details. Lana hugged him impulsively. Thank you, Nathan. For everything. Thank you for making me feel like history matters, he replied. Now go. Dance. Be young and happy. The kingdom will still be here tomorrow. Lana made her way back to the festival, where the celebration was in full swing. She found Cade near the musicians, chatting with some of the Crown's Mercy members who'd helped during the coup. The moment he saw her, his face transformed with that smile that never failed to make her heart skip. There she is, he said, breaking away from the group. I thought maybe you'd been kidnapped by overly enthusiastic nobles. Just needed a moment to breathe, Lana said. Being the center of attention is still new. Well, you'd better get used to it. Cade offered his hand. Because everyone wants to see the princess dance. Especially me. Lana took his hand, let him lead her into the cleared space where couples were already swaying to the music. The moment his arm went around her waist, everything else faded into background noise. I've been practicing, Cade said as they began to move. That complicated one with all the turns? I can do it now without stepping on your feet. I'm impressed, Lana laughed. Though for the record, I didn't mind the footstepping. It was endearing. Endearing is just another word for clumsy. Endearing is another word for real, Lana corrected. You don't pretend to be something you're not. You just are. I love that about you. The words were out before she could stop them. Cade's eyes widened slightly. They'd been dancing around the word love for weeks, both feeling it, but neither quite brave enough to say it first. You love that about me, he repeated carefully. Or you love me? Lana's heart hammered. This was scarier than facing Kimberly. Scarier than the rescue. Scarier than becoming a princess. But if she'd learned anything over the past 6 months, it was that the things worth having were worth the fear. I love you, she said clearly. All of you. The roguish scout who makes terrible jokes. The loyal friend who's saved my life more times than I can count. The man who looks at me like I'm the most amazing thing he's ever seen, even when I'm covered in training mud and complaining about protocol lessons. Cade stopped dancing. For a moment, Lana thought she'd miscalculated, that maybe he didn't feel the same way, that she'd just made a massive fool of herself in front of half the kingdom. Then he was kissing her. Right there in the middle of the dance floor, in front of everyone, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally pulled apart, the crowd around them was cheering. Some scandalized, some delighted, but mostly just happy to see their princess finding joy. I love you too, Cade said, his forehead resting against hers. In case that wasn't clear from the very public display of affection I just committed. It was fairly clear, Lana managed, breathless and grinning. Though my father is probably going to have words with you about proper courting protocol. Let him. I'll just remind him that I helped save his life. Pretty sure that earns me some rule-breaking privileges. They resumed dancing, closer now, more intimate. Around them, the festival continued, music and laughter and the sound of a kingdom healing. What are you thinking about? Kate asked after a while. Mara, Lana admitted, wishing she could see this. See me happy and safe and surrounded by people who care. She would have loved it. She would have been proud, Kate said, of everything you've become, everything you've accomplished. I hope so. Lana touched the pendant at her throat, her mother's pendant, worn every day as a reminder of where she came from. I hope they're both proud, Mara and my mother. I hope wherever they are, they know that their sacrifices mattered. They do, said a voice beside them. They turned to find Ethan standing there, smiling indulgently at their interrupted dance. May I cut in? He asked Cade. I promise to return her intact. She's not mine to return, Your Majesty, Cade said with a grin. But I'll share for one dance. He bowed and stepped back, leaving Lana to dance with her father. You and Cade seem serious, Ethan observed as they moved into a more formal dance pattern. We are, Lana confirmed. Is that a problem? Not even a little bit. Though I will have the if you hurt her, I'll end you conversation with him at some point. It's tradition. Please don't traumatize my boyfriend. Boyfriend? Ethan's eyebrows rose. So it's official? As of about 5 minutes ago, yes. Lana felt her cheeks heat. Is that okay? I know there are probably protocols about royal courtships and appropriate matches and… Lana. Ethan's voice was gentle. Your mother was a healer's daughter when I met her. Not noble. Not connected. Just a brilliant, compassionate woman who saw through all my posturing to the insecure young king underneath. The nobles were scandalized. The council had fits. But I married her anyway, because she was mine and I was hers and nothing else mattered. He spun her gently, then pulled her back. If you love Cade, he continued, if he makes you happy and treats you well and supports the incredible person you're becoming, then he has my blessing. The rest of it? The politics, the protocols, the opinions of people who don't matter? We'll figure it out together. Lana's eyes burned with grateful tears. Thank you. Thank you, Ethan replied, for coming back to me, for giving me a second chance at being a father, for being exactly who you are. The dance ended, and Ethan pulled her into a hug. Your mother would be so proud, he whispered into her hair. I see her in everything you do. Her kindness, her strength, her absolute refusal to let injustice stand. I wish I'd known her, Lana said. Me too. But I'll tell you stories. As many as you want. We have time now. All the time in the world. As the sun set over the kingdom, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Lana stood surrounded by everyone she loved. Her father on one side, Cade on the other, Nathan and Margaret, and the Crown's Mercy members scattered throughout the crowd. All of them celebrating not just a festival, but a future they'd fought together to secure. She thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, scared, alone, watching her father grieve from the shadows. That girl had thought happiness was impossible. That family was a dream for other people. That love was too risky to ever reach for. She'd been wrong about all of it. What are you thinking about? Cade asked, returning to her side as the musicians struck up a new song. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, Lana said. She looked up at the darkening sky, at the first stars beginning to appear. Thank you, Mara. Thank you, Mother. Thank you for giving me this. Talking to ghosts? Cade teased gently. Talking to family, Lana corrected. All of them. The ones I lost, and the ones I found, and the ones still to come. She took his hand and her father's hand, linking them together. Come on, she said. Let's dance until dawn. Let's celebrate being alive and together and free. Let's show the kingdom what joy looks like after surviving darkness. And they did. They danced as the moon rose over the palace. They laughed and sang and told stories of the battles they'd won and the future they'd built. They celebrated not just a princess found, but a kingdom reborn. And when dawn finally broke, pale and golden and full of promise, Lana stood on the palace balcony one more time, looking out over her city, her kingdom, her home. The Alpha King had wept at his daughter's grave, believing her lost forever. But she'd been watching, waiting, growing stronger in the shadows until the moment came to step into the light. And now? Now she was exactly where she belonged. The lost princess had come home, and the kingdom would never be the same. And that's it. The complete journey from shadows to light, from lost princess to heir, from grief to joy. What was your favorite part? Let me know in the comments. And if you love this story, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss my next adventure. I've got so many more stories to share with you all. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Thank you for believing in Lana's story. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay wild, stay brave, and remember, even ghosts can find their way home.